All right. Today on Open Loops, we have Michael Horn, who George Norrie of Coast to Coast fame said is the world's leading authority on UFOs, which is interesting. Very interesting. A big claim there. As well as he is the American media representative for the singularly authentic Billy Meier UFO contacts. Still ongoing in Switzerland for almost 80 years. He's researched UFOs for 42 years, an international lecturer, award winning documentary filmmaker, and former SETI, that's SETI, team member. And look, he's uncovered photographs that were top secret with UFOs. We're also going to talk about the recent release of the Netflix film, Don't Look Up, and how Billy is related to that. There's a whole lot to go into here. Michael, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Greg, thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here at the start of a fresh new year with all of the things that it promises, both good and bad. We'll try and make it the better part of it.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, look, overall, I mean, um, what is there? I don't know how it seems that this Billy Meyer is he sees things, or at least he can see into the future, or events that are coming in the future. I don't know what the full scope is, but 2022. I mean, do you have any intel on that before we get into this interview?
Well, yeah, the challenges for this year and from here on are massive. And not that we should be surprised because this man, Billy Meier, has been publishing his information since he was a 14-year-old boy.
Wow.
14-year-old boy. Actually, earlier, since he was about 10, but the stuff from 14 on became uh, most well known for his earliest information because he's the first person to be warning about a natural man-made climate change, global warming, damage to the ozone, and hundreds more things starting in 1951 as a 14-year-old boy. And
Wow.
you said to me, well, Billy Meier, where's he been? Who is this guy? And this, to give you an idea of the seriousness of this, the fact that people in in the world of the paranormal, the spiritual, the new age, the UFO, anything, don't know who Billy is. And I'm not, believe me, I'm not criticizing you for it because I know why people don't know.
Yeah,
The
no, I want
ma-
to know.
well, the massive, deliberate, unrelenting suppression and censorship of these singularly authentic, still ongoing UFO contacts has been the handiwork of the intelligence agencies such as the CIA and others, not only in America, but in other countries, because the powers that be have deemed this information and this evidence, is still irreproducible evidence, to be too dangerous. In other words, if people knew that photographs like the one you might be seeing over my shoulder of a UFO taken in 1975 or 76 were absolutely authentic, not models, not hoaxes, pre-digital, pre-Photoshop, all this stuff, and that the man has published over 1,200 of these clear UFO photos, films, video, and
Yeah.
that's the easy part, the easy part. And I say that because the higher standard of proof is to be found in what you're asking about in the 45,000 plus pages of information with voluminous hundreds of examples of specific, error-free, prophetically accurate scientific, environmental, geopolitical, financial, and economic information that simply boggles the mind. And
Wow.
and there's nothing to believe here. Like everything I've said right now, a person would have to, if they're interested, do a little bit of due diligence to determine for themselves if what I've said is a lie, a hoax, a fraud, or if it's true, because
Yeah.
it's true. It's
Tell me this, Michael. Did you, out of curiosity, and we're definitely going to go down this rabbit hole more, for yourself as a researcher, were you already looking at UFO stuffs and then stuff, and then you landed on Billy, or was Billy your entryway in? How did you become this
all right.
ambassador?
Well, I, as a very young boy growing up in the 40s and 50s last century, I listened to radio shows, space shows on radio. I mean, the most primitive of things, but they were engrossing. When
Yeah,
TV space shows, I would start to watch them. Strangely enough, I was never a Star Trek fan, and a few other things. I watched much more primitive stuff. And I always would have dreams about lights in the sky moving in formation against the night sky and all disc-shaped things. And I had dreams of disc-shaped objects when I was young, and questions about life and space and the truth about God and Jesus. These things were in my mind at 10 and 12 years of age.
totally, totally.
Right? Okay, so then in 1979, I walk into a bookstore in Los Angeles called the Bodhi Tree, and there's a photo book. I have it sitting over there. I still have it, with a really clear photograph of UFO on the front. A photo similar to the one behind me, but a little different. And I went, wow. I went over, I picked up that book, started to look at it, and I went, I got to get it. I bought the book. And then I started to read it because there was information in there, not only about the man and the investigation into this whole case, but quotes from the alleged extraterrestrials who are talking to him, supposedly. I'm going, what the hell is this? This is fascinating.
Yeah,
Well, I read that book and I reread it, and I was looking into all things UFO and New Age and what have you. And then it's a matter of, it takes me until about 1986. I'm in a small cafe with my daughter and a woman I knew in Sedona, Arizona. We're the only people in there except for one guy sitting all the way across by himself. And we've just ordered the classic New Age avocado and sprout sandwiches on whole wheat bread,
okay,
right?
yes.
So while they're growing the avocados, apparently it takes an interminable amount of time. We call the guy over to sit down and join us, and we start talking about all this New Age stuff that's just starting to happen in the mid 80s. And Billy Meier's name comes up along with UFOs. And the guy says to me, because I talk about, well, I've got the book and all, he says, well, have you read the contact reports? I said, what's that? He said, that's, well, about 1,800 pages of the conversations that this man, Billy Meier, has had between 75 and 78. I said, I didn't know they existed. He said, I've got them. Come back. When you're in LA, come up to Decker Canyon. I'll give it to you. I go, 1,800 pages of what were mimeographed. I don't even know if you'll know what that is, because that's the way.
Right.
Decades ago, instead of Xerox and digital, they would churn these things off on this round thing, and you'd get the printed stuff, oftentimes in a blue ink, who knows. And so I got those and I read them for months. Part of the reason was they were so fascinating. The other part was whoever translated them had put them into English, but the kind of a backwards from German with the verbs and the, and I'm reading this stuff and fascinating. And it's 1986 and 87. And I stick these under my bed. And then one day, living in New York, no, I've done that already. I was living in LA, in Marina Del Rey area, and I opened up a local paper, and there was an article, and it said, Lawrence Livermore Labs, which is a big laboratory in California, big national laboratory, made a new discovery, A-bomb testing tied to ozone damage. And I went, oh, really? And I'm starting to read it, and I went, wait, why is this new? I know this. Well, wait, how could I know that? These percentages? How could I know this? So I reach under the bed. I start with the first 100-page block, 18 of these 100-page blocks. And I'm going through, it takes me a minute or two, and there it is. 1975, they're talking to him about the ozone damage. And not only, and it goes into a lot of stuff. And they said to him, well, from what you knew back in the 1950s. What do you mean 1950? What's going on? That the ozone damage isn't due only to the greenhouse gases, which are big contributors and all of this, but also to atomic testing and explosions and this and that. And I'm going, holy cow. And they give the percentages, which are only slightly different than what's in the new article. This is from 75. Percentages might be a little greater now in this article. I'm going, gee, this is about something more than just UFOs. Well, to try to not make this forever, but that led me to pay attention more to newspapers and TV. And I started to notice all these things. New discovery. And I'm going, yeah, I've read that one too. And I found them all. And I started to keep track of them. And over time, other people started to, I started to publish this on my website, which I published all this stuff that I would find up until about 2015. And then my blog is the main organ of dissemination. And we now have a couple hundred, 250 maybe, specific error-free examples of precise, prophetically accurate scientific information covering all of the planets in the solar system, black holes, the extraction of oil tied into earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, which was then a new discovery in 1990, I believe, by Professor Paul Siegel at Stanford University. Publishes this thing. And I'm going, wait a minute, this is familiar. I pull it out, 1976. It's all there.
Wow.
So, yeah, see, this is the thing. Now, no government, and the government, the US and the Secret Service has started to learn about Meier in the mid-70s. They even got some of their own photographs of the craft, which they won't show, of course. And this started to create more trouble for Meier because here's the logic, and I understand it. If a man comes forward and he can prove in a heartbeat, he's meeting with human beings, not little weird creatures, human beings from another star system, and that they are giving him photo ops and giving him information on all sorts of scientific stuff, anywhere from a week to 60 years before we ever discover it. What the hell is going to happen to our religions, our political structures, our militaries and corporate and all this stuff? Because all of the powers that be need to maintain a certain kind of control. And if you are going to have to admit there are beings visiting one guy on Earth, we can't control them. Well, they don't seem to be harmfully intended, but they operate outside of any constraints that we could possibly try to. Sorry, folks. Well, that's not the kind of thing that makes people feel secure.
Yeah.
Especially in a world with all this, all the imaginary religions, the crazy politics that makes people fight with each other all the time over bullshit. So what happens if somebody then is also getting vast amounts of information that explain how life works, how we as human beings on this planet could have peace and love and harmony and free and abundance, no conflict, how we could do that if we wanted to. How other beings worked it out, who also went through this kind of grief. Not perfect beings in a space brother nonsense. They went through it, they worked it out, now they're passing it on. They're not coming down to meet with us. If they'd wanted to attack us or destroy us or dominate us, they could have done that when they started meeting with Billy Meier in 1942, 80 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's why you don't know about Billy Meier. That's how greedy the bastards that control things on this planet are. That's how suicidally greedy they are. And it affects us to this very day with this very deadly, ever-evolving and mutating pandemic that he first wrote about when he was 9 years old.
9? He wrote about the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yes. Now, a lot of people say, well, do you have the original paper? No, we have the reproduced info, but you don't have to rely on that because I started publishing on February 25th, 2020, information that he started to provide that got translated into English. Everything that we published on that day alone, there were 14 bullet points. Every single one of them we published before the CDC, the WHO, Fauci, any and everybody, and they all turned out to be 100% accurate. And if we had listened, if we hadn't been suppressed, that was when there were 57 cases in all of the United States, America. 57 cases, February 25th, 2020. I then started to send this information because I started getting more of it. By March 5th, I had, that information and more, and I began to send it throughout the state in which I live, Arizona. 5 cases in Arizona, March 5th, 2020, to every possible government, educational, medical, and media person I could reach. Local government in the city here, the governor, everybody I have it all documented. Not one of those criminally negligent incompetence would even investigate. The ones who would respond gave me reasons why they wouldn't look at it, why they wouldn't report. And now we have, in a state that we started off with 5, I think the number now is over 1.34 million and well over 21,000 deaths because a bunch of stupid, officious know-it-alls decided that they couldn't look at anything that didn't come. They told me, well, we rely on the CDC for our information. And my answer is, well, they're validating us. We're not publishing after them, but they wouldn't listen. I reached out to the Native American peoples here who were being decimated by this thing. And their hierarchy, they wouldn't look either because they rely government money, government authority. This now is a tragedy of unimaginable. You asked about 2022. The Omicron thing we're experiencing now will probably affect the majority of humankind one way or the other. And I don't mean to get into too touchy a thing, but Meier made predictions about the numbers of ultimate casualties from this, the numbers who will be negatively affected by the vaccines. They were publishing that information in 2019 before the vaccines were out. We knew that this was Wuhan from their 2019 information.
Right.
This is not, COVID is not a plot by Bill Gates and Fauci and Bezos and all the rest. I can't speak to, I don't know about the vaccines because there's plenty of controversy. Meier first predicted the coronavirus epidemic in 1989 and 95, and that referred first to the SARS that came out in 2003. And that came out of a bioweapons lab in Guangdong, China. It was an accidental release, as this was. The Chinese government wasn't behind this. That's the thing. There are secret labs in countries that even the leaderships of the countries don't know about. And that's another story. And if you want the other shoe that drops, if you want to know who was behind COVID.
Yeah, who was it?
Let's tease it a little. It was a Chinese leader whose name was Mao Zedong, but it was at the initiation of a disgruntled and humiliated American who had been very prominent in America in the 60s and 70s. And you may not know, I'll give you his name. His name was Richard Nixon.
I was about to guess that.
Nixon? Yep. And you won't, here's the thing. When people finally catch up with Billy Meier's material, they think they've just discovered everything. They still haven't figured out it's Nixon. They haven't figured most of this out. And we've been publishing and sending it to any and everybody, hundreds of journalists and scientists. They won't respond because the mainstream journalists are afraid now to do anything to rock the boat because they'll be kicked out, they'll be fired. Yeah. They have to promote the party line. Joe Rogan won't look. We gave Joe Rogan Billy Meier's photo book, and Joe Rogan, having smoked too many joints and been choked out too many times, said, oh, gee, these photos must be Photoshopped from the 1970s. This is what you're dealing with in this world. People who are too stupid to have any responsibilities. They should be sitting in a kindergarten somewhere where they could hopefully do no damage. And I'll give it to Joe. Rogan has interviewed some very important people and all this stuff. But even some of the people who are on the right side of understanding how bad this is, they don't get it. A lot of them don't understand the precautions that they should have taken when we were the first to publish them in February, and when they were, well, so I don't want to just go
Well,
on and
does he have exact dates? I mean, does he say this month, this time, this is how many people this is going to affect?
as a matter of fact, with COVID, and they stopped doing it, I think, but over the past 2 years, in several months, about 3 weeks to a month before the end of the month, they gave specific casualty numbers for a number of countries. And they said, these will be the numbers reported officially at the beginning of next month. And they were right every time.
When
I
you
have
say
a,
they, is it Billy Meier's people in Switzerland? Is it a group of people? I mean, who's they?
the Plejaren extraterrestrials.
Oh, oh
This,
my.
so you have two things here. Contemporarily, we have these people who have provided to Billy, they've spoken extensively about the virus, far beyond what our scientists know about it. They warned about variants and mutations. The whole thing with Omicron, they've said there's other ones coming. And the stupidity of the so-called leaders is so staggering, so unimaginable, that they refuse to shut down travel at the very beginning when they should have, and true, real lockdowns to protect people. Yes, people are, nobody wants to wear a mask because we think we're inconvenienced by a goddamn deadly pathogen. Oh, that's inconvenient. I don't like it, but I don't want to catch a disease that is airborne. We are the first people verifiably copyright to declare this is an airborne pathogen. It's spread on surfaces. Children are the main hidden spreaders. Asymptomatic spread. It goes on and on, Greg.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, Michael, is that, and here's why I'm not just going, oh gosh, what's this guy talking about? Is because you're kind of saying, in a way, you are going against a lot of what the New Age and spiritual community is saying. A lot of them are just dismissing this thing. A lot of them are saying, oh, it's the flu. Or they're saying, well, don't wear masks. It's against our freedom. And then they're going right to the vaccine and talking about that. But what you're saying is, no, no, no. This is real still. Yes, it may have been manufactured, but wear a mask, be smart, and pay attention to people that are predicting things. So that I find already different than the main spiritual narrative, which is doing its darndest to really just talk about freedom and dismiss this thing as much as they can.
Greg, you hit on something that's so, I'm smiling about it because, yeah, it's so bizarre because the people, let's say the spiritual community, if they're political, they're more left-leaning. Then you've got the people on the right who are, far right conspiratorial, and they're screaming about their freedoms. And nobody understands. The people that say they're patriots, let's say on the right, we're patriots. True patriotism is caring about your fellow human being.
Yeah.
Right? It's not all about you, but if you made it enough about yourself where you said, I'm going to protect myself, I'm going to wear this thing to protect me, you're then protecting others. And
Yeah.
likewise, it's so simple. Look, all these people that scream about their freedoms and how bad masks are for you. For how many decades have nurses and doctors been wearing masks to protect themselves?
Right.
Well, these people, they've got to get the crap out of their brains here. The people in the spiritual community, I wish I was reaching more of them, because here's the other shoe. There's a lot of shoes to drop here. The core of this whole Meier thing, it isn't UFOs. It isn't prophecies and predictions. It's a teaching, a spiritual teaching that is non-religious. There are no beliefs. It literally, If you want to learn how to fix a computer, you get a good book, instructs, and then you test it. You don't believe it, you test it. Cars, grow vegetable, anything. That's what has been handed down for many millennia through a lineage of
Yeah.
real prophets connected to the Plejarens extraterrestrials for over 13,500 years. They want us to understand, to learn how life works so we don't literally destroy ourselves and make this planet uninhabitable for a long time. Billy Meier's, if you read one, there's one contact report, he has these conversations. He just transcribes them all with one hand, translates everything out. He speaks about the environmental crisis, which he's the first person to warn about, and he excoriates Greta Thunberg and all the green deals and all that stuff because it's all band-aids. And here's the uncomfortable reality. He has like 60 pages nonstop spelling it out in every detail why we are in trouble. And the core reason is overpopulation. And the answer isn't to annihilate people.
Right.
The answers are birth control, controlling our numbers so that natural attrition helps to, because when I try to tell people, you can take an aquarium or a terrarium with earth and you put organisms, plants, fish, whatever you want, keep adding. And what happens? It always dies out. You overcome, you overconsume that which is available. The wastes pollute. And there's strife. Organisms fight for any and everything. And that is what happens on planet Earth. And they've been trying to tell us this since day one, back in the 40s. His first extraterrestrial teacher explained it to him and showed it to him as he showed him this time. And
Let's go back. Let's go back, Michael. I'm curious. Can you talk about the first encounter, the details? I mean, was he brought aboard a ship? What was kind of the original story here, so people can know?
Sure. As a very young child, we're talking 3 and 4 years of age, he already was fascinated with the cosmos. He would climb out of his bedroom window at night and stare at the stars and be thinking about what is this universe? I mean, 4 years old. So at 5 years old, one day, he lives in rural Switzerland, beautiful pastoral area, forests and hills. And he hears a man's voice, an old man's voice speaking to him in his head. And he doesn't know what to make of it. He's a little scared, he's a little uncertain. He goes and confides in the parish priest. He didn't even want to tell his family. But he had a nice relationship with Pastor Zimmerman, the parish priest. And Pastor Zimmerman had been already telepathically contacted by this man, Svath, because Pastor Zimmerman, while he was a pastor in a religious environment to, local people at that level of consciousness, he had a pretty cosmic mind already, and he could take it. And basically he was told, this is who I am, and I'm going to be speaking to one of, the young people in your community, the son of some of the people who are, worshiping you, and he will come to you. He will be a little troubled, and I mean him no harm. He's a special young person who I will, offer tutelage to. And all. Anyhow, so sure, little Edward shows up, and Pastor Zimmerman says, "There's nothing to be afraid of. It's unusual, but don't be fearful. It's not the devil." That's the whole thing in the 40s and in a Christian spirit. So shortly thereafter, it's one day or other, he's playing outside and he feels kind of drawn to go deeper into the woods. And there was a clearing, and there's a bell-shaped kind of craft sitting there on 3 struts, and standing in front of it is an elderly looking man with white hair in what Meier says looks like a deep sea diver suit. And he said there was no helmet on it, and the man just kind of had a friendly sense about him, and he beckoned me to come forward, and I went up and he started talking to me. And that was the first time he went on board the craft. And then while there were these telepathic contacts, everything then became face-to-face voluntarily on board the craft, where he was taught and shown things, and also equipment that this man had was put in his head that Meier said it was used to show him things from the past and the future, to accelerate his thinking abilities, to help him develop his consciousness so that he could handle more and more information. And then he was taken and shown different places on Earth, on the solar system, and in different times. And this
Oh,
continued. We have a film that we filmed in 2006, put it out in 2008. It's called The Silent Revolution of Truth. And I'll say it now because I have to obviously send you a copy of it. And then any of your listeners that want a copy, I'll send it free. No strings
wow.
attached, buy anything, just so you can catch up, because some of the stories told in there, Meier's got the most documented life of anybody I ever know. There's photos of him, I think, at 5. There's Zimmerman and Meier at 8, and all the things that we learned subsequently that a very famous psychologist named Carl Jung became involved in helping young Meier to write and send information out around the
Wow.
world, warnings about the environment and stuff. This is so massive and so, in a sense, low key for a couple of reasons. One, it's been actively suppressed. Meier's life there have been 24 attempts on it. It's bizarre stuff. There have been kidnapping attempts of his kids at knife point, and just, man,
Does he have security at his house? I mean, I worry about this guy.
in the early days, the extraterrestrials kind of assisted, but they
Yeah.
also told him, you're going to have to deal with it because there's a lot of people that are unhappy with you. And he's a pretty savvy guy. In the 1950s, he was known in the Middle East as the Phantom. In India, Pakistan, Turkey, he was hired by these governments to bring in serial killers and mass murderers, because when he was about 16, he ran away and joined the French Foreign Legion, learned how to handle weapons and all this stuff. So he had nerves of steel, because also his teacher, Svath, taught him lots of things, meditation. So he somehow, when he was traveling around the world hitchhiking, he ends up in these countries going out and bringing in, apprehending these deadly killers. And he
Wow.
said, he says, I never, because he also had a 357 Magnum and knives and all this. He says, no, I never killed anybody. He says, I shot back at people sometime to wound them if they attacked me, but I would never kill anybody. And, I tried to, bring people in to make the society safe and all that. His life it's a combination of, what is it? Lawrence of Arabia meets Indiana Jones meets Luke
Yeah.
Skywalker. It's just the most amazing thing. And he's a very unassuming person. He never brags about anything. He's not busy, saying, "Oh, look at took these photos and I was." This is the evidence, and if you find it, you can do with it what you want. There's no coercion. And nobody's told to believe in anything, which is so refreshing, as far as I'm concerned. But this is a man who's just, he's here to do his gig. He's absolutely not self-pitying, considering the things this man has been through. It's just staggering. I mean, if you learn 10 years before it happens, you're going to lose most of your left arm. It's your destiny, and we can't mess with that. Have a nice day. Back up. What's this? Sorry, we got to trip out again. So, I mean, it is beyond. And so here's the irony. Every phony, lying, profiteering son of a you-know-what ufologist, researcher and all, just wants to be a profiteer and make a big deal about themselves. And they've suppressed all of that you're hearing today, probably for the first time. You won't hear it from these people. And you can name anybody you want. And I've personally made sure that virtually everybody in ufology has had access to this material. I lectured at all these different UFO conferences and what have
Yeah.
you. And then I started to call out the people at these conferences. That's when they stopped inviting me back. I said, you people are lying. You don't know what you're talking about. You're suppressing this. This is authentic. And some of these people would actually attack the Meier case so they could make up their stories. It's brutal. It's just
Yeah, what do
brutal.
you do about all this? I mean, I love reading the accounts of just go name some names for you. I mean, Lyndon Moulton Howe, Stephen Greer, Bob Lazar, Corey Good, David Wilcock, these big names in the scene right now. They're talking about UFOs, some
Yeah.
experiencers, JJ and Desiree Hurtak, people that I very much I respect the academia, at least the academia they put out there. But are you saying that? I mean, should we discount other people? How do you know whether to discount someone's
Sure.
experiences versus
Well,
Billy's?
okay, good. These are the right kinds of questions. It's not about, oh, I believe that or I don't believe. Well, how? So here's the thing: the confirmed existence of and contact with advanced space traveling extraterrestrials would be the single most important discovery in all of science and human history. But how would we be able to determine that? And there's a simple word: evidence. And every person you mentioned is missing one important thing: evidence. And you name them, and I won't put the words in your mouth that I will take responsible for. Every one of the people you just named is a lying profiteer, in my opinion. I will. I've tried to say it to their faces. I will. Stephen Greer with his phony thing. What is it? Oh yeah, hold on a second.
CE5 SC. I mean,
Yeah, take your flashlight and it will do aliens on demand. Aliens on demand. They're waiting here for you. Are you serious? And then it's free energy and send your money and ambassador trainings for hundreds of dollars. This man is a shit. I offered him all of this. It was about between 2004, 2006 in Los Angeles at a panel at a New Age. It was a whole life expo. It was a UFO panel. He was there. I was at this end. I stood up at a certain point. They called to me and I said, Stephen, I'd like to save you a lot of trouble. All the nice people that are coming forward to say they've seen UFOs. I'm sure they have, but they don't know what the hell they've seen. So let me give you the best evidence you can have. Billy Meier, there's 90 eyewitnesses. Now there's more, and I'm one of them. And there's countless photos and films and this and that. Stephen Greer wouldn't even look at me. He just stared straight ahead because he's a shameless, money-grubbing, egomaniacal narcissist. And Stephen, if you ever get to see this and you want to take a shot at me, I'll be glad to rip you a new one. Linda Moulton Howe. Let me tell you, see, because what's the real cost
okay.
here? The real cost here is our survival. These are the people that suppressed everything you've just heard from me, and that's a fraction. They won't allow it out. So what happens in 2005, I think it was 5 or 6, I'm contacted by an organization called WAG TV from London. They want to come over to Switzerland and interview Billy for 15 minutes. I said, I'll find out. And Billy said, sure, how about doing it at this time? I said, sure, I'll come over and we'll do it. So they come over, and about an hour and 15 minutes into their 15 minutes with Billy, they just keep asking him stuff because he's just, is a fountain of information.
Yeah.
So what happens is somebody comes in, one of the people there, and said, hey, Billy, why don't you show them the handprints? And they said, oh, yeah, the handprints. So we go out to the parking lot where he lives, and there's a car there. It was a Subaru, a little mini station wagon, maybe from the 1990s, from his stepson. And all over the hood are these handprints. It's a silver Subaru. And you get closer, you can see the papillary lines are embedded in the finish. But that's not all. There's 6 fingers and a thumb on each of those hands. It's a 7-fingered handprint. Some of the prints go from the elbow to the fingertips.
Right.
And, okay, so we photograph this and they film it and all. So what's the story? Well, the Plejaren extraterrestrials that Billy works with, they're human beings. They sometimes take off some time and they have other races that they work with. And one of them are called Trilaner, and they're small statured humans, but they're different looking in the terms of they have a light greenish tinge to their skin, and their skin chemistry is very acidic compared to what we have. So Billy had once met them on a great ship in about 1975. They were there, and the leader of the Plejaren race was there and introduced one of these people, and Billy wanted to shake his hand, as is a customary, we do. And the guy said, I don't suggest you do that. And Billy said, well, why not? It's a friendly thing. He said, yeah, I know it's friendly, but their chemistry is different. Billy said, well, can I just touch the finger here? He said, yes, yeah. And Billy says, my finger burned for a week. And they just have a different composition. And so they didn't do that just once. They came back later when somebody had a new Volvo and put some handprints on the hood of it. And it's just like, they're a little capricious. They're people.
Wow.
And so Linda Moulton Howe contacts me if she hears about this. Oh, can I bring some scientists to Switzerland to examine this? And I asked Billy, he says, yes, as long as they don't destroy the cars, come on over. She didn't do it because she's got her imaginary evil alien mutilation gig, evil alien abductions. If you get it straight, Linda, it's called secret military abductions and mutilations to make people afraid of evil aliens. So you named them all. You named the Prince of Liars, with the Corey Goods and the David Wilcock, the Profiteers. I had met David Wilcock 2004 or 5 at an event in Santa Clara, California, and he was doing his thing or whatever. And then of course he starts to pick up more momentum. The more BS that you pump out without anybody ever demanding evidence, it's just fantastic how nobody, this is the problem. See, my whole thing, if I get steamed about this stuff, I say to people, ufology is the least scientific field.
It definitely seems to be. Yeah.
It's absolutely, nobody demands evidence. If you speak up against somebody, people are snowflakes, they fall apart. In what field do you have credible people who study something who don't speak up if they disagree or demand evidence? No, this is ufology. We should treat each other with kid gloves. I'm saying you're a bunch of idiots. You're amateurs. None of you know anything. You don't know anything. And here you are, you don't want to be called out for it. You want to peddle your books and you want to speak at the events and have parties. Meanwhile, Billy Meier is saying there's epidemics coming. There's tremendous scientific we'll leave that. There's tremendous environmental upheaval coming. 1975, I have it on my website that I stopped updating in 2015. He's warned about the eruption of Cumbre Vieja in the Canary Islands within the last 2-3 months. What erupted? Cumbre Vieja. They explained the possibility. He's the first one. We published in 2005 warnings about the mega seaquakes and tsunami that will hit in the Cascadia subduction zone up in the Portland area. That it will 9.0 Earth seaquake will run for 5 minutes at 9.0, and then a tsunami, then another quake, another tsunami. 3 years later, Oregon State University publishes the same finding. We published it already. We have so much. It's like, what do you do in a world where everybody wants make-believe? Billy Meier foretold the internet in 1958. I mean, one thing.
He predicted the internet?
Yes, and it was in the same paragraph where he spoke about the coming EU, European Union, that along with the United States would try to biochip every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth to control them. A topic that is now getting some activity in certain circles. It's, Greg, this is why.
This is very remarkable. This is a very interesting conversation we're having, I gotta tell you.
Look, you have people that you have listeners, you have viewers. I welcome questions. I'm never offended by a question or a challenge. If people, and I don't believe a damn thing. I will point you, if you want, to wherever you can find the same stuff I found. Oh, yes, I discovered photographs that nobody'd seen before since they were taken, top secret photos in 81, a UFO and a US stealth fighter. And I sent that information out to everybody in ufology I could think of. Not one of these geniuses, not one of these liars would even look. Why? Because they can't profit from it. What good is it to a Stephen Greer or a Bob Lazar or any of these people if they say, hey, newly discovered, never before seen 7 UFO and stealth fighter photos from 1981, and time travel may have been involved in the photography. Billy Meier, hey, wait, where's everybody going? Don't go look at Billy Meier. I'm important. I'm
Right.
making the point. So, pardon me, but we are faced now with such dramatic stuff. There are going to be earthquakes. Well, no, the earthquakes happened as predicted. There will be the eruption coming of 5 major volcanoes in Italy, along with the undersea volcanoes, which will start to erupt. Things that are coming that will imbalance everything. There are things coming to this country. There is going to be the dispossession of the people of the United States of America by the government, which will turn the military and police against the partly heavily armed populace. I'm closely paraphrasing something Meier predicted in 2017. At the same time, he had predicted that there would be attacks by anti-government forces against some of our officials. Can you say January 6th? There are times, Greg, you have just started to pull the thread on the proverbial sweater.
Holy
and
moly.
And if people should be saying, how do I determine the truth for myself? Not, I believe Billy Meier. It's not about Billy Meier. And he knows it. He signed on for this gig as the 6 previous prophets before him did. And he knew what was coming with it. He knew that people would vilify him, hate him, try to kill him as they did the others. And that this was now the final time we would get the teaching of the creation, the teaching of the spiritual teaching, and we could preserve it electronically as well, and it wouldn't be changed and turned into religions as it was turned into religions like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, with gods that never existed, no such things, but whole other realities about beings that came here, human beings, long ago, about the origin of the peoples on this world going back millions of years, stuff that, and then the thing is that our scientists start to discover this stuff. You just were talking about Don't Look Up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been living Don't Look Up for the past 20 years. What do I
Yeah. What's
mean?
going on with that? What's going on with Don't Look Up? What is the parallel here?
Okay. Starting in 1981, Billy Meier had a meeting with the extraterrestrials, the one of several that would continue, where they told him there's an object coming from the depths of space, which is going to be the title of a new movie I'm putting out, from the depths of space, and it's heading towards Earth. And Meier says, well, is there any danger to us here? And they said, yes, there is.
Holy
And
moly.
there's 2 dates, and our scientists at NASA now knew the dates as well. See, NASA discovered it in 2004. Billy warned about it in 1981, 23 years before. So April 13th, 2029, or April 13th, 2036. If we don't deflect it, it hits the Earth. And if it hits the Earth, you're getting something perhaps not quite as big as the fictionalized thing, but it will affect the entire planet. It will kill tens of millions of people. It will poison the atmosphere. It's a biggie. And they told him where it's going to hit. Now, NASA started to poo-poo it once they discovered it. Then, funny thing, a couple of years later, they changed their size estimate to within 25 meters of what Meier was told. So all this time, as soon as I learned about this, I start putting out press releases and doing what I can. I had the contacts in which he's explained this illustrated in comic book form. I've got it in comic book form for free on the internet in 6 languages to try to get it, because Meier said, well, what should they do? Should they try to blow it up? And he said, no, your scientists must not try to blow this up, because it will rain down on your planet like crazy. What they need to do is to send up a rocket with a device, a nuclear warhead, that they detonate at the right calculated right distance from that, and the shock wave sends it off a few degrees. Your world will not then have to deal with it. If you don't if they, the world scientists, don't come together and do it, more than likely, this thing hits. That's one possibility. Is only 7 years from now. I mean, come on. And so the Russians, after we published this, the Russians started to call for a joint effort to deflect the asteroid. And the Chinese and, European space agencies have expressed interest. I don't know what they're doing right now, but NASA, of course, isn't going to, they poo-poo everything. And there's
So there are other organizations around the world and
Mhm.
government organizations that do take Billy Meier's stuff seriously.
Higher levels in Russia do take it quite seriously because of things that are coming in terms of war, that this country is going to make a very big mistake unless something changes, and I doubt it, a very big mistake, and it's going to provoke Russia and China into a war that we not only don't win, but what's left of what they've said happens here is just not pleasant.
What should we
So
do? Should we get out now? Do we have to leave this country? I mean, what would you recommend for the people that really do not want to be destroyed by Russia and China?
then my personal recommendation, because people always write me, well, where are you going to move to? What are you going to, I say, I'm staying here. I don't love the government. I mean, the country's the country. It's a beautiful place. There's lots of good people here. There's lots of idiots like every place else. But this is where I live, and I want to try to do any and everything on my level to alert people, because we talk about, various kinds of preparedness, and why studying the teaching is the best preparedness, because from that, when you get your mindset right, then everything else starts working. Okay, the answer is people, listen, if people want to try and leave the country, it gets harder. There's no guaranteed safe spaces. The best thing to do is to come together and to join the effort to speak up, fight
Right.
against this otherwise terminal thing here. It's not good. Look, in 2017, they've been warning about the Russia thing since the 1970s. And in 87, in this one document called the Enoch Prophecies, the real book of Enoch, if you will, the real Enoch, predictions and prophecies of Enoch, they again spell out what will happen if America and Russia clash at this time with the weapons. In 1987, Billy Meier is already talking about computerized weapons, lasers and clones and biological chemicals. He's talking about AI, the robots that will get their own autonomy and that pose a great threat to all of humankind, which we're now seeing the first stages of. We are so stupid as a species because we rush headlong to embrace every bit of technology. We think that's the answer to everything, when the overall maturity level of the mass consciousness is right now at, I don't mean it any way other than factual, it's at an adolescent level. The mass consciousness operates at an adolescent level, maybe mid to teen level, 14 years of age. This is, it's the techno toys, it's the flashy, it's the bling, it's the celebrities, it's the selfies, it's the porn. Complete vacuousness going on between, sides of the head, the ears. So, okay, and there's a lot of people that aren't like that, but not nearly as many. So those who consider themselves to be truly awake, not just political. I mean, politics makes people so hopelessly stupid. I'm sorry. Politics is mind rot. How can you sign on for something because this party is that? How about universal truth? What is it? That's what the teaching is. In my case, it's completely apolitical. When you are neutral in a balanced way, when you're neutral positive, you can see things as they are and embrace truth. Hey, somebody on the far right said this. Well, that makes sense. Somebody on the far
Right.
left said that, right?
No, I totally get this. I mean, I think, this is so interesting. There's so much here. Um, Tell me this. I mean, is there anybody in the UFO ET community whose accounts you do believe
Well,
beyond Billy?
sure. It's what are the actual accounts? Somebody once asked me about. I'm trying to remember his name right now. He's a nice guy. I met him once.
Travis Walton or
Yes, yes, Travis Walton. I was in New Mexico, I think it was 2009 or 10 or something. We both were presenting at the same thing. And I ate a meal, we were sitting next to each other. I thought, this is a genuine guy. And my feeling was he believes very much that he had certain experiences. He doesn't claim to know what they are. As far as I know, he might think they're extra, but he's not. And I thought, I think this guy is sincere. He believes it, and something did happen to him. And I know some people involved with the Meier material that said, yeah, Travis Walton also, he seems like a straight ahead guy. But here's the thing. Nobody is meeting with voluntarily wide awake and interacting with beings that are so far advanced beyond them that it's pointless. It's not that, oh, we're better than you. It's just like, do you get a physics professor, fourth, year university, who goes to discuss things with a kindergartner? He might say, what a cute kid, but there's no, the gap is too great. And our best, we've got Avi Loeb from Harvard University, who thinks a big rock flying by is a spaceship. Avi's all about himself, doesn't want to look at anything else, because now he's got a book. This is the game. I have never seen, people say to me, oh, you're just believing Billy Meier, but I said, I don't believe Billy Meier. I don't have to believe him. I've been able to, on every level, to a legal standard, a scientific standard, eyewitness standard. What else do you need to do? I know he's telling the truth. I don't know about everything. He's got 45,000 pages of information. I've only been able to read through a few thousand in English, but based on all the evidence, I'll give you one other thing in a second, but I don't know anybody that has any evidence of anything. It's all anecdotal. But so why, if not for self-attention and all the profit, why are somebody coming forward to say all the stuff that they can't? Well, people can say, well, listen, there are people that have been messed with, but 99 out of 100 of that is secret military. Even in the Meier case, they say there were some people over the past decades, whatever, you can count them on less than two hands, that were some extraterrestrial race examined them and put them back. There was a hostile extraterrestrial race based on this planet underneath the Great Pyramid at Giza for a very long time that tried to manipulate people. There's a lot of stuff here that doesn't mean it's just one person with one. There's still another race. What do you think that the Tic Tac video, we know who's craft that are, those are.
What do you mean by that? Go into that more. Whose craft is it?
Okay, well, if I've surmised all this correctly, there are 4 other groups that are not native to the Earth, who observe the Earth, are curious, and have monitored things. They don't interact with anybody except on maybe the rarest of occasions, and it's not no ongoing, something happened. And one of those groups is based underneath the Earth. And they've been here a very long time. They are descendants of an earlier extraterrestrial race. When I interviewed Billy about this, and I asked him more about them, and I said, well, is it, are they just have a little thing? And Billy said to me, it's a state. This is a serious group of beings who they are referred to as the sons of the sun. And they may have a light bluish tinge to their skin. They're fully human. They have what would be to us futuristic technology, craft that can pass from the inner Earth through and be seen flying around. And when they want to, let their craft be seen. And it appears to be that the Tic Tac video, since their craft are the ones that are seen most in terms of an extra or intraterrestrial race, theirs are the most seen of these other craft, other than our secret military and the secret military of other countries, which are quite abundant in terms of sightings. And there is a prophecy, I think it's in the Hanok Prophecies, that if the US is foolish enough to provoke a war, if the West is foolish enough to provoke a war with Russia and China and the allies there, probably it will be this race that offers help to the rest of the world against us.
Oh,
This won't go well. And they've already described the kind of weaponry that would be used against this country. They've spelled it out. And so, at certain levels of our intelligence, the people, I'm not saying anything that some of the more thorough intelligence people don't know. They'll
right.
just never want to talk about it because they have an agenda. They think you can't outsmart the prophecies because they're not based just on a person. They're based on the immutable law of cause and effect. And this is one of the great laws we have to learn to understand. Why we have this tragedy with the environment, this disaster just going to unfold on us now, is because we have violated all the laws of nature. We think that we can pray away to imaginary deities, saviors, and saints our stuff, because one religion's got this goofy thing that if you go and harm somebody, you can sit down with some guy who may be molesting kids in the neighborhood, and he's going to give you some magic words. And if you repeat these magic words, you're absolved of your sins, because you don't have to bother atoning and paying a price to society. No, you just say you're whatever the hell they are, and
Right,
you're off
right.
free, right? Well, that's make-believe, people. And if people like make-believe, and they will continue to like make-believe, that's fine. But that gets us in a lot of trouble. Everything that has come from our make-believe religions, our make-believe politics that have violated the true laws of this universe, the teaching of this creation energy law, those of us who see ourselves as innocent in this, we're not trying to do, we get to have the sins of the fathers vested upon us, so to speak. So to answer your question, may the people who care start to come together.
Now
So I'm
wait a
sorry.
minute. This is yeah, no, I mean, hey, even if you don't believe in Billy, this is a good message. My gosh. Now that said, I want to believe in this gentleman. I want to figure out what exactly. So he was told to start writing down everything, or did he just have the intuition that he should jot down all this information?
His earliest teacher, who started also to teach him advanced German to write very well, kept his own records that these extraterrestrials have. So at times when Meier talks about a certain thing that happened in his childhood, they say, here's the record from Svath about that time and what he observed. He talks about you. But Meier was also, of course, told as soon as he was old enough to start keeping his own records. Now, he sent information around the world on 2 occasions at least, one when he was, I think, 12, once when he was 14, spelling out all the stuff about the environment and the overpopulation, the wars, the disasters, epidemic. And he had one response to 3,000 letters. His school teachers helped him to send this out, the people who knew this kid's hot, we're going to help him out here. West Germany, I think, once said, thank you very much. That was it. Nobody wants to know. People don't want to think. This country right now, pardon me, the people that occupy our government are incompetent. And the people that put them there didn't think this through. And go back as many years as you want. These people can't, they're making it up. This is what I'm trying to say to people about this whole COVID thing. These people are making it up as it goes along. We are stuck with this sucker for all time. There will be times when it's under control, but it is now permanently with the human race. This was a very maliciously, deliberately created bioweapon that is very sophisticated, and then it's got its variants, some of which are more or less virulent.
Right.
There's nothing to believe. Don't believe in Billy Meier. Don't believe in anything.
But what about the idea, Michael, that there is a suppression of information because the elites do know about these extraterrestrials? I mean, we hear these stories. Again, this could be completely made up. It's it often sounds as if it's something that people made up, but this idea that the Greys flew over the White House and Eisenhower had meetings with them. There's ideas of these elites, even people at Skull and Bones and the Masons and the Illuminati. These people have been in contact and they know the secrets and they're hoarding all the knowledge, or they are lizard people and they are in control. They're an extraterrestrial species, and we can't let human beings know about this knowledge. I mean, is there, in your experience with Billy, are there people in power that also are getting messages like this and are afraid because they know he's right?
In my understanding, it's kind of simple in a way. Like you mentioned, the so-called Greys, the Roswell crash, and there were at least 8 others, different parts of the world, where androids were recovered, or at least there were crashes, and some of them they recovered the androids. They're not extraterrestrial full humans. They are android human beings that were genetically engineered by the people in Zeta Reticulum. So when they were found, there were at Roswell, there were a couple that were still alive and the others were dead. And they got whatever information they could, however they could, from them. But there are no Greys walking around because these beings also don't reproduce. They have no means of, they don't have sexual reproduction. They're android, robotic human beings, Meier said, our scientists it'll be probably a couple thousand years before we can do that. They understand about robots and all, we're working towards that, but no, what those things are, these beings can have their own thoughts, although they are connected. It's the whole story. So the whole thing with the Greys is disinformation. But and Eisenhower didn't meet with them, but the whole idea about the elite, see, you know what the elite know? They know and work with a part of what this teaching is. They understand how thoughts create realities, and
Right.
And we get the new age version where people now I want a Ferrari and I want a new girlfriend and whatever. But the elite got the message because they, through at least hundreds of years, maybe even millennia, through these lineages, they learned how to control the masses. They were connected to the early religions and banking and all these things. And they didn't have to be religious at all. They knew how they could control people. And they knew that if they wanted to accomplish certain things, they would ruthlessly pursue those things using certain laws of creation of cause and effect. What they don't seem to care about are the consequences to others or actually to themselves, because there's information, I'm not going to try to go into it right now, but you don't quite get out of this life scot-free no matter what. There are things that a human being brings upon themselves that aren't even discernible to somebody else when they're passing from this world under the best of circumstances. There's no karma per se. It's not like karma the way, the New Age and Buddhism or Hinduism stuff. No. It's really cause and effect. And we in any given lifetime, we have our positives and our negatives. We do this and we do that, whatever the balance is. In the next lifetime, our personalities don't reappear. Our spirit forms, which are impersonal, reincarnate into a totally new human being, can be the same or a different race or sex, anything, and no direct connection to the previous personality. It's part of the way evolution works. It's only very much farther down. Now, again, this isn't a belief, it's simply what's said here. So don't believe it, just consider it if you want to. Much farther down the evolutionary track, so to speak, in millions of years, in each subsequent new incarnation as the person and reincarnation of the spirit, the evolutionary level, the knowledge and the wisdom is growing and growing. There'll be an exponential difference between now and, let's say, 5,000 years, who we would be, or 10,000, we needn't worry about it. All this New Age ascension stuff, it's warmed over Christianity with Egyptology thrown in. we're just we have confused leaders and confused teachers and confused profit-seeking ufology people don't know their ass from their elbow, so it's all confused.
But how do
Yes,
we then? I mean, look, and I'm totally. I mean, there is a lot of confusion. Um, you think that if people examine these photographs, if you think people examine the teachings and really delve deep into Billy Meier, they will have more clarity about these matters.
it's very possible. You know, we've effectively defeated all skeptical challenges. People who are hardcore skeptics, they think they're still in the game. Sometimes they're not. I'll explain, because you mentioned the photographs. It's not the most important part, because the real part, just I'll jump to the end game, is each human being is 100% self-responsible for everything in their life. We decide for ourselves. Is this BS? Is this real? And we want to try to have the best tools for evaluating things, whether it's what's the best tire for my car, or the best fruit to grow on this property, or the best this or anything else. We try to get the best information. So I'll tell you, I'll make it a shorter story of what happened to me starting in January 2017 on a Saturday morning at 8:30. My phone rings. I pick it up, and there's a gruff sounding older guy. I don't know him from Adam. Says his name is Joe. All he will say is, I'm an investigator. You represent Billy Meier, UFO case. Yeah. Are you willing to discuss it with me? I said, well, of course. He says, are you sure? I said, yeah, well, why do you ask again? He says, because I think it's a hoax. I said, well, let's go and find out. Because I figure whenever I actually speak to people that are skeptical of something or questioning, I'm going to learn more about, well, what do I know about that? What can I say to address that? So this guy,
Absolutely. Totally
you know,
agree.
it's more interesting. I don't want, this isn't about believers. So go believe Stephen Greer, folks, if you really want to, and see how it'll lighten your bank account, and that's about it. But anyhow, and as I say, yeah. Anyway, so this guy calls me every Saturday morning at 8:30. One question after another, one harsh challenge. It's not a conversation, it's an interrogation. And I'm enjoying it, because I'm thinking, I don't know what this guy does, but he's tight on the money. He's not giving me any wiggle room. He disappears at the end of March, pops back into my life somewhere late August of 2017, and he says, it's me, Joe. Will you still talk to me? I said, well, yeah. What do you got? He said, I'm going to tell you who I am, and I'm going to tell you about your Billy Meier cases. He had one of those kind of flat East Coast accents, right? He said,
Totally.
right, one of those guys. He says, I'm one of the top former investigator and supervisors for the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigation and the Department of Defense. I said, really? He said, don't take my word for it. Open your email. I open my email, and I get, I don't know, 2, 3, whatever, photographs, tabletops full of citations close enough that I can read that they're from the government, and that this guy is this is their boy. He's the prince. Promote this guy at every opportunity. This guy's sharp. Yeah. And I said, well, it's pretty impressive stuff. He says, you seen it now? I said, yeah. He says, okay, now you do this. I said, what? Delete it. I said, okay. I mean, the guy's who he says he is.
Right, right.
Right. So he says, okay, after I talked to you for those 3 months, I started to look into everything. And then I went back and I looked in that early information you have from 1964. Billy Meier in India, he's written about, he's interviewed in a newspaper. I looked up that newspaper, highly credible, been in existence for 100 years by then. I looked up the reporter, really good guy, award-winning, very respected. And he's talking about Billy Meier's got an album there with 80 UFO photos. And he's describing some of them, and you still have them. I looked at the photos. He's describing them. You still have them. He says, I'll get back to that. And he says, then I looked up the young girl whose grandfather, whatever, is the monk at this ashram in India where Billy Meier is. And this girl is seeing these UFOs along with all these other people. And she sees the ET woman. And now she's a retired diplomat to the UN. I look her up, highly credible person. Why would she come forward and, after all these years, and expose herself to this? So he says, okay, so I have to know, if a skeptic tells me this is a hoax, all I want to know is, where did Billy Meier get 80 UFO photos in 1964? Is there some kind of UFOs or us in India? Because if you can't prove that he hoaxed those photos, you're done. And the case is real. And then he goes on and he says, look, beyond that, Billy Meier knew where to go and when to be there. And then there's the films. He knows where to go for the filming of the UFO. And here's a guy, he doesn't try to make any money. And I mean, the guy basically tells me my own story about why I know Billy's real. And so he says, I'm giving you this in an article, put it on your site. So since that time, no skeptic who could, who'd represent himself as being anything but just a silly cult believer in skepticism has come forward to say, well, this is how Billy Meier did it.
Yeah.
And I had a lawyer, I didn't even know this guy, a former trial attorney and prosecutor, basically writes me a couple of paragraphs saying, basically, you're doing courtroom quality research. This meets proof, beyond a reasonable doubt. People should pay attention. The late astronaut Gordon Cooper, I never met him. There's a video online, we got it. He's talking to people in Russia saying, oh yeah, there's this guy in Switzerland. Yeah, Billy Meier, that's his name. He's been meeting with extraterrestrials, really good photos. The guy says, fine. Yeah, fine photos. He says, I don't know why people are trying to say it's a hoax. This is real. Astronaut, Gordon Cooper. So people can start to weigh the pros and the cons. Then you get into a teaching that really says, there's nothing to believe here. We're going to tell you this and this and this, and it's up to you to try and see if what that does in the the sanctity of your own cranium as you think through all this stuff. What happens in your life? Well, what happens in my life is I'm glad to say it, I get emails from people all the time. Oh my gosh, that changed my life completely. I've been reading this book or that book or these two books or whatever, and it really, now I see things differently. And great, wonderful. I'm happy for you because I know what you mean. Tell your friends. And we have tons of free articles on the teaching. I have 1,500 free articles, 1,700 if you include my website, free articles all about everything in the Meier case. And then if people really are serious and they I want to know, what is the teaching that the Plejarens live by? Well, here it is. It's the same damn thing.
Wait a minute. Have they ever walked around? I mean, are the people that are in those ships, do they roam the earth ever?
Well, yes, they have. Let's just talk about these times because they've been present on Earth in the past and throughout history, different times and places. But there are some people not directly connected with Billy Meier who accidentally in different countries ran into them on 2 occasions, I think it is. Yes, once, I think it was an Austrian guy and a woman in Persia. She may have been a German woman. But in Switzerland, there are a number of people who've seen them, and they try to not be seen because it's not about that type of thing. But in the Silent Revolution of Truth, you'll have at least one person who describes seeing them. One of them who's a very large person, not directly with the race Billy works with. They're more of the size that we are, but yes, they've been seen. One person at the center tried to take photographs of one of them, so the camera got taken away and the film taken out. Because here's the thing, they look like us. What are you going to do? Now, there are photographs that were taken by Meier of 2 of the women, one of whom visited him in India. And Meier never developed his own films or video stuff, sent it away through what's called Bayer camera, a photo camera shop. And they sent it off to Kodak or whatever. Well, of course, things started to not come back and things got intercepted. And Meier wasn't that he didn't care that much because he's been on these things since he was a kid. But he knew, I got to take the photos and the films for this mission. And then he takes the photos, throws them in shoeboxes. So lots of them got stolen. Some came back that were falsified, including photos of 2 of the women that he never picked up on because he didn't, it looked enough like him. And one of the women, the skeptics came after them because skeptics then saw photographs 20-something years later that had been falsified. And they thought that they were from Billy. And they were actually a blending of photographs from the Dean Martin show from two dancers from the 70s with the actual women, and some very astute people who then researched showed how the photos had been hoaxed and how they could not have been hoaxed by Meier and why. I mean, this is a drama that doesn't stop. And
Yeah.
it's meant to be, because if you just had people that come down, you'd have a world in chaos. All the people with all the different beliefs would go nuts. There would be suicides, there would be attacks.
Yeah, what do you
Crazy.
think? They brought these theologians right now, right? They brought these clergymen to NASA to figure out how to deal with the ET situation. That was in the news recently.
I'm going to try to find them and send them this information. I have personally sent a few thousand over the past 20 years, a few thousand emails out to scientists, meaning astronomers and different scientists, journalists, UFO people, any I've had the equivalent of maybe two handfuls of actual responses. People are weak. They are weak-minded. They can't think for themselves and they don't want to. They want to be told what's real and true. And so you mentioned the elite. There are people like that who are very willing to tell people what's true and to do other things that people think are happening now, which isn't quite the case. The COVID pandemic is not something the elite created, but Billy already wrote about how such things, he wrote about this years ago, the genetic engineering of viruses and DNA and this and that will be used by certain elites to try to reduce the population of the world and certain specific racial and ethnic groups, because the people of Earth have allowed it to go crazy. And the elite, no, this is going to be a big inconvenience for them if this keeps going. The pollution, the water, which is going to be ever more scarce. I mean, this is unfortunately is nothing to believe. All you have to do is just watch the shuck and jive, watch the news, try to figure things out as they go along.
Why
You will
Billy?
see.
Why him of all the people?
Mhm. Good. So I'm going to give you the answer I give to people, meaning the preface, according to the information in the case. That means that I cannot prove the following statement. I can only tell you that it's what's stated here. And as far as I'm concerned, it's fine if it is, it's fine if it isn't. Here it is. We already covered the fact that there's such a thing called reincarnation. And according to the information in this case, there is a very, very ancient spirit form that had already gone through the material evolutionary existence billions of years ago in parts of the universe that we don't even know if it ever had life in it, but things have long gone to energy. It came and it went, and there's whole stories about what that was. It's said that there was a very powerful leader of peoples at that time who had established societies that lived in harmony with these true creational teachings, the laws of nature and the universe. And as he did his evolution over then countless more millions of years until his spirit no longer required a tangible physical body, only a semi-material, the kind of stuff, the new age wet dream that we ain't going to get to for a long time. So he finally reached that level of evolution in what's called the High Council in the Andromeda Galaxy. And then from there, in pure spiritual form, moved into the lower levels of the pure spiritual realms. The lower levels meaning the entry level, if you will, what's called the Arahat Athersata. And that's a highly evolved level, but it's not the highest level. So anyhow, in that level, then it was offered, because of the way things were going in the material worlds in our universe, that a prophet could come, one who had already done evolution and done all the lessons in this life, to re-enter into physical human material reincarnational cycle and be subject to the whole thing all over again, except he would come in at a level where he had certain knowledge and abilities available, but not the full package he had up there on the Arahat. But he could come in with enough of it so that he could come back and try to help certainly the worlds that he had when he was a manifest as a leader in their earths, or whatever you want to call it, to help to bring them back to the teaching of the spirit and the teaching of the truth and teaching of the life and creation, so they would get away from the wars and the terrorism and the domination flying around the universe and blowing things up and being crazy, and the wars amongst themselves. And he did that. And over a period of time, utilizing what were called a global peace combat troop. This meant not just human beings who would be soldiers, but android, robotic fighting, machines, if you will, that would operate under certain parameters to try to take under, let's say, control those who were the ringleaders and the troublemakers and all, without killing them if possible, because the laws of creation really dictate that the right way to deal, even with the most serious of crimes, is not to kill off the body and the person, because you then create a stagnation in the evolution, and that person doesn't get the opportunity to have to be put in a place where they can do no harm to others, and must then deal with their own conscience and with any of the teaching material that's made available to them, that they may realize that this is not right evolution path. And let's just say, under the best of conditions, and some of these people going back a long time had very long lifespans, very long,
Right.
hundreds. If they were taken in possession of, so to speak, and imprisoned, if you will, or put into these same-sex environments where there was no chance of getting off, no chance of procreating, and only those things that they could use for their own sustenance through self-responsibility, and the education to learn the teaching of this creation energy teaching, that they would have as much opportunity and time to come to contrition, to atonement, to realization, to rectification, so that when they did pass from the life and they had the reincarnation of their spirit again, that new personality, that new incarnation as a person for the reincarnated spirit would not be handicapped by having to start from a place where all of its lessons from the previous lifetime were cut short, and where they stopped in a place where violence and aggression and domination were the furthest point of their evolution. Now, in terms of Billy Meier then wasn't Billy Meier at the time. At that time, that personage was known as Nocodemion, for what it's worth. And he would go on to perform this prophet role for different worlds, and to try to have people who would help to spread the spiritual teaching, who would come as teachers of the teaching, and he would help to get that straight. And then when that came to this world, at least 13,500 years ago, even though that spirit form came long before that, but when this particular mission started, he appeared, and there was a prophet then called Enoch. Actually, it was twice that these get little details you can't do anything with, but Enoch, then Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah. Wow, we know those names. Emmanuel, well, we don't know. We'll get back to Emmanuel. Well, let's tell you who Emmanuel was. Emmanuel was a prophet, teacher, contactee, whose name was changed and his story was changed a bit, so they could create a person who never existed called Jesus Christ. And then, oh boy, we'll get back to that in a minute. Then Muhammad. No, Muhammad did not marry 9-year-old girls. He didn't enslave people. He was a liberator of women and children, but that got falsified in the Quran. And then my version of it is, after you've had these 6 previous prophets, whoever's in charge of this gig saying, well, what are we going to do? Electronic age, the final guy comes. We've had the guy who overturns the table in the temple. We've got the firebrand on a horse with a sword, and people crucify. What do we do this time? And somebody says, I know. By the time people find him this time, he'll get all this material out. He'll be a late middle-aged, pot-bellied, one-armed, gray-bearded Swiss farmer. Nobody's going to start a religion about anybody like that. They said, that's it. So Billy Meier gets to pop up, and people think he's simply a Swiss farmer, which is fine. They don't know that the man has got a level of genius that is unparalleled. If you read him, you go, oh my gosh, are you serious? When he's 10 years old or 12 years, he writes something, you're reading it, and you're going, who wrote this thing? A 10-year-old kid. And you go, no 10-year-old kid could write this. Okay, it's not about, oh wow, Billy Meier, great guy. See, everybody wants to believe. No, it's not about a cult. You don't believe me, you don't have to join anything. Just the guy who did the gig. Okay, so that's the gig, and the gig has been done now. They've gotten all this information into our world. Sure, they're sharing more because of the pandemic, but they put everything into the world that we needed to have from here on. So that maybe in 800 years, we will have a basically civilized world where people are not killing each other over pieces of paper and coins and glittery pieces of stones and belief systems and imaginary gods and all the rest of it. They really will get, oh yeah, we're here to take care of, to be good stewards for this planet, because everything we can see out there that isn't made by a person, that's all thought made manifest and animated. It's life. And even things that we don't think are alive have complexities to them, whether they're rocks and stalactites. And all this stuff is created somehow. It wasn't done by a guy with a long beard, and it's a mystery. And wow, what if we really see the interconnectedness of every single thing and every single person, and recognize that that is what love is. The certainty of the knowledge of the interconnectedness of everything. And our job, if you want, is to learn so that we can get along and learn from everything. And in our sciences, which will then grow and evolve in commensurate to our mental consciousness, spiritual capabilities, we will create great things for our world. And as we become able to fly the coop and become space travelers ourselves, to in the trillions of years remaining in this universe before it collapses in on itself, we will go forth and we will find other worlds where people are slowly evolving and going through the different things that we've gone through, and with great understanding and compassion and love, and not wanting to mess up what they're doing or anything else, we will find the way when they're ready, when they can receive those who come from outside of their world. We will be among those who come to try to present the teaching, to offer some things for their betterment, and to help them evolve, because we are here to live and to help live, not to do for others, to live their lives for them, or to punish them or to invade them. We are here to know this real love, that even the people that hate us, or we might be others, we love them. We don't have to like everybody. When we see that human being that's just past us or is on the screen or anywhere, that is person animated by an immortal, eternal spirit deep in the brain, just like we have, we can't hate it. We can't hate anything. We can fight against things that are done in ignorance. Evil is ignorance in a way, and fight to correct and to protect and to help and to heal. But we do it from a place that is neutral. It reminds me of something I once read long ago when I was searching through different religions. I think it's in the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna, the warrior, is talking to Krishna. Believe me, I don't remember much else from the whole damn thing. And Krishna, and Arjuna is saying, hey, I don't want to go out there. He's an archer. He's a warrior. I don't want to go out and kill people. I just don't feel it. And it's karma and this, that. And Krishna says to him, what you must remember is you are here to protect. And when you protect your people and you do it without hatred, when you do it as your duty, when it's your duty, and you don't try to harm and torture, but you do what's necessary. You do not accrue any, they use the term karma or whatever. It's not a guilt upon you. It's only a guilt when we do things out of hate and evil, and we want to torture and kill and all of that. So it's knowing what one's duty is in life, or what the various duties are as we come to find them. It isn't all about military things. There are different duties that we recognize to protect the innocent and the helpless, to help the planet. Everybody gets to decide these things for themselves. And when we're motivated by that striving to do the good, to find and live in true love and peace and freedom and harmony and wisdom, and then we make mistakes. That comes with the territory. We're not perfect. We then correct our mistakes and we learn from them, and we're grateful. Our gratitude for everything grows, and we realize that we're wealthy when we have what we need.
Michael,
Oh, what do you mean? Yeah.
I gotta ask you something here. I mean, I think this is a great message, but why why do we need the aliens for it? Why do we need Billy's contact? Why not just go with the Bhagavad Gita or Buddhism or just a humanistic message of love? What does the alien piece, and especially Billy's contact with aliens, have to do to I mean, what does that do to enhance this message at all?
Well, it's a funny thing, because so many of the things that have evolved into our belief systems, religions, came from aliens, if you will, messing us up. This is a part I didn't get into that much, but it's pretty deep. This goes back over 22 million years, even to another star system.
Is
Where,
this beyond the Sumerian tablets and Anunnaki? I mean, is there
yes,
anything in there? Okay, what do you say about the Anunnaki and all that stuff? Complete crap,
what
or
we no, well, the Anunnaki, the whole thing, Zachariah Sitchin got some things right, but a lot wrong. Yes, the Syrians were the people, the Syrians he was talking about, who had the sculptures of people with space gear and all that. They were actually, if you will, descendants, or let's just use the word to some degree, descendants of extraterrestrials who actually came from the Syrian star system, Sirius A and B. But he got it very wrong. There was no mining for gold to throw it in the atmosphere and all this stuff. The whole thing with, what's the darn thing that they call the, they think
Mars,
it's a planet?
Nibiru, Nibiru?
Nibiru. Nibiru is a comet. It's an uninhabited cometary body that comes through the solar system. I think it's every 3,600 years. And the Syrians saw it, and the Syrians, they had mathematics and astronomy. They were highly, because they were tutored by very much more advanced beings. That's just in them. Now, when you go to the Bhagavad Gita, you've got quite possibly extraterrestrials who had the Vimanas, and they were doing their wars and crazy stuff. And then wherever you look in our history where there's a major religion, it does have gods connected to it, usually, sometimes goddesses. And these were people, and they screwed up things because they knew certain things of the teaching of this universe. It's a universal teaching. It's not Billy's, it's not the Plejarens. It's kind of what the universe has set in motion. We know there's a law of gravity. Well, yes, and we know there's a law of cause and effect. It's not like we need extraterrestrials. It's just that, unfortunately, some of the ancestors of these people were among the ones who came here and lorded it over primitive human beings who'd never seen a friggin', a pen, let alone
Yeah.
the flashlight. So the Lord is booming down, all this stuff. And so these people have tried from an oblique non-presence, just an oblique inserted through the prophets. Everything that was given to Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad got corrupted into religion. None of that, they just changed so much of it. The real teaching of Emmanuel, which is the teaching, the same essential teaching that Meier teaches in contemporary language, was discovered by Meier and a Greek Orthodox priest in an ancient tomb in in Jerusalem in 1964. Yeah, and translated. And then when it came out in English, then a professor at Oregon State University, comparative religions and all, thought it was a Bible hoax. So he went and got it and he started going through it. No, he comes out with his own book and he calls it Celestial Teachings, his book. And he says, this book, the Talmud of Jmmanuel, is the original teaching upon which the book of Matthew is based, not the other way around. And he goes through, he says, 350 inconsistencies in the book of Matthew, resolved in the Talmud of Jmmanuel. 150 of them weren't even known at the time this was discovered. And here was a guy who was a skeptic. He was going to debunk it. And then he got involved in the ufology part. He sent photographs of Myers, like this photo that's behind me here,
Yeah.
UFO at the tree. He sent some of these where they're at the tree to forestry experts he knew up north at the University of Oregon. And he said to them, tell me, is that a model tree? Is it a miniature tree? Don't even worry about the silver thing. Don't trouble your little head about it. Is that a model? And they all wrote back and they said, well, no, this is an Aves albus or whatever. It's 40 feet high. There's this nesting at the top that you can see. That happens there. Yeah, model tree, no, and there's pruning marks. We've got the photographs. There's pruning marks. No, they're not models. They're not miniatures. And they might have been curious, but he wasn't talking about the UFOs to them. So we've had independent analyses, not just the skeptical guy from Department of Defense that comes after me, other people since 1978 who've analyzed these things. They've analyzed the sounds.
Oh, yeah, the sounds, right? Isn't there a sound, too, from a spaceship that was captured?
Yeah, I wonder if I've got it handy here. Because, yes, of course, they deliberately created the sounds
I mean, these are, for everybody listening to this, if you're listening, these are the clearest photographs, and we'll link to this, theyflyblog.com. By far the clearest photographs I've ever seen of supposed UFOs. It kind of goes against Neil deGrasse Tyson's critique, right? Neil deGrasse always says, oh, well, why are they always blurry? Why are they always... But these are not, for some reason. Not at all.
I'm going to find you... I think I know where the sounds might be found here.
I mean, this is wild stuff. Yeah, it makes you go like, why is this guy the only person in the world that can get a clear photograph of this thing?
No, the other people, there's 5 other photographers of him too. Oh. He's got the clearest ones, but his are the, clearest, but there's 5 other photographers. He's got a video and it's on my theyfly.com. You can click on it where Billy he's videoing a UFO at a tree in the distance, and he gets in the frame so you can see the damn thing's a couple hundred feet away from him. It's just, honestly, the skeptics have done more harm to humankind than the government, the know-it-alls. Oh, it kills me. Now, I'm going to find that for you if you bear with, and if you don't want, I mean, I'll look while we speak about anything you want.
No, this is very interesting. Yeah, wow, I do see him on theyfly.com, where you can see this video footage. It is...
Yeah. Billy's right down there, and if you click on it, after a while, he'll step into the frame, and he zooms in on the damn thing. But all the know-it-alls, they know, oh, it's a hoax and blah, 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 they can't do it. And there's a guy in England, he's made wonderful models. I even helped give him information so he could make his best attempt. Wonderful models, but he can't duplicate it. It drives him crazy. Oh, let's see, how do I find this thing?
So fascinating. And oh gosh, what about, he took photos from inside a craft too? There's some photos.
Yeah, I'll show you. Hold on, I'm going to do that while I'm doing this with you. Maybe you'll be able to see. This is one of them. Right here.
Yeah. I see it behind you.
And then with getting my big hat out of the way, that one's out there. Then here's another one, daytime, above Switzerland. I'll get out of the way.
They let him take photos from within the craft?
Yes, they wanted him to. They gave him the best of everything so that, that the primitive, stupid know-it-alls, our brothers and sisters here on Earth, would have a chance of figuring it out. But no, we know it all. You know, I mean, it's just, oh, help, somebody help. Let me just see here.
Why do we never actually see other things inside the craft? I mean, I want to see the panels. I want to see
Sure, we
the
do.
technology. Is there?
Yeah, we want to, but the problem is, let's see, start download. Is this it?
I mean, I just want the whole field to evolve, right? We see these photos. We see it's always some object in the sky,
Yeah.
but it's rare that you actually get um, some other kind of technology or photos of the aliens themselves. Or, I mean, that's so much rarer. Or more rare, I guess that's the word. Yeah, what is that? What else is there
Well,
besides just flying objects?
well, that's the thing. We've been given all this eye candy, but the game is to get past it. It was to start the controversy. Really, that's why all of this stuff was done, so that people would get curious. They'd want to know more about this. They'd want to, investigate, not get hung up on too much on the hardware. Let me see if any of this. People have used the sound recordings to make music or something or other. I'm just looking for where the pure sounds are. I
It's
got
all
them, but
good. It's all good. The hardware is all I care about. I mean, there are claims out there that, in some ways, there are claims that the time travel devices that the U.S. has secretly came from the Roswell flight.
yeah.
I mean, do you know anything like that? Anything about time travel technology or advanced
And
technology that the government's hoarding?
here's something. Um, we will, in a long time from now, if we survive ourselves, literally, we will get time travel. Okay, great. We don't have it. We don't have even real yet space travel. We throw tin cans, to the closest objects, around. We throw tin cans. It's not real space travel, and so we're going to have a long, long time for that. But Billy Meier's, when we start to look at Billy Meier's evidence and question, well, did he really travel in time and space? And oh my gosh, the stuff he talks about and recounts, we can't prove it. We can only go, well, what's the likelihood? Why is this guy really trying to fool us? And why? What for? Why would he go through all this trouble? People try to kill him all the time. Why would he go through this trouble for no profit? Oh, he must be
Right.
making millions. He doesn't. He has a nonprofit publishing group, and honestly, he's just the nicest guy you could ever meet. That's the funny thing. He's just a non-assuming. He's a very strong person, but he doesn't push anything.
Right. And well,
So,
then you got the Wikipedia article that just is a hit job. I mean,
oh, they won't stop.
he's a
Wikipedia.
UFO religion. I mean, occupation, cult leader, and author. Um, Meyer's prophecies repeatedly blamed Jews. What's
No,
going on with that?
no.
What's up with that? Referring to Jews as gypsies. Is that dispel that right now?
Yeah, you're right. Here's what happened with all of that stuff. Meier. Oh, wait a minute. And I'm going to come back to that. So I don't think I'm.
I want to hear the sound. Let's hear the sound first, and then we'll get to the Jewish criticisms. Can you turn it up a little bit? It's very faint, but it sounds pretty weird.
So that's. Can you hear that? I don't know if you can hear it.
Yeah, oh, that's better. That's better. Yeah, turn that up.
send you a link to it, and I'll try to get it to stop.
That noise does sound pretty weird, though.
What?
That noise is weird. I mean, what is that?
Very complex. The sounds are very complex. All right, so I'll send you that link so you can do that yourself.
Yeah, wow.
I will send it to you in an email. But let's get back to the Jews thing, because people will think, oh, you're reporting the terrible thing about the Jews. All right, here's what happens with that whole deal. And it had originally, I had a reaction, oh my gosh, why are they saying all these things? What happened was these alleged people, if you will, have kept pretty good histories on, well, just about everything and everybody in our world, if you will. Our races, things going back eons and eons, long before we know anything about people being here. And what they explained, because he wanted to know the truth, he said, about Jehovah, about God, about Israel, about the Syria, everybody, the origins of all the religions and peoples. And he was very fascinated with, he did a lot of his own scholarly research into, the Aryan people and the people that came from this. Okay. So he was told by the alleged extraterrestrial woman Semyaze that the original Israelis were not a real race in and of themselves, the Hebrews. They were a people gathered and brought together from various tribes, from gypsies, from outcasts, from all sorts of rough and tumble types out there in the Middle East, under the draw, if you will, of Jehovah or other extraterrestrial gods. There were names like Kamagal and Jehovah and different people for the purpose of having. Now remember, when you go back to these original teachings, supposedly original, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Well, if you're the only God, what other gods could be before you? Well, there were other people vying for power. And if you start to dig into it all, it's pretty, wow, really this and that, and that's different than the way it's written in this book and that book. So they, as part of the whole thing, when he wanted to know more about the history of the Jews, it was explained to him that the people who became, the Hebrews, the Israelites, and all of that, let's say on the side, a positive side, because there's many things that they said were really going to contribute to great harm, but they said these people ended up getting persecuted unfairly throughout history. And it was because of that persecution and being forced out of being accepted in society in certain ways that they were kind of given a work of handling money in a way, starting at the lower levels of, well, these people will just be the ones that do this kind of thing. Now, I'm not being articulate with the exact way it's expressed, but basically it starts off where they are kind of discriminated against. They only get into being able to use their abilities because he says the people's, evolved and they're very smart as a people. And so they came into the financial worlds and the banking worlds and took control of a lot of that. And they, in the process of that, while it's not as a truth that every Jew is like a master of money and all of this stuff, that they got discriminated against harshly and accused of being the people running, whether it's Hollywood or all the banks or anything else. And of course, anti-Semitism. And they, in the past 10 years, even Meier has written extensively about the dangers, the real rising anti-Semitism. He was given the true numbers in the Holocaust of people killed. I think the Jews, it wasn't 6 million Jews, it was 4,600,000. And I remember in one of the contacts, the extraterrestrial Ptah is giving him the actual figures. And he says something like, well, it wasn't 6 million, it was only 4. If one can say only about slaughtering 4,600,000, whatever people. And he said, what they've said is this is and Billy was predicting this decades ago, the upsurge in Nazism and anti-Semitism, white supremacy, and racism of all kinds is going to come to the fore in the new millennium. This is what we're in now, obviously. So they have warned, and he was a person who very specifically exposed a book called The Protocols of Zion as an anti-Semitic hoax, formulated by a couple of, at least, if not more, people who had been in the Russian or Soviet intelligence in the early 1900s who wanted to scapegoat Jews.
Right.
So it's an untruth that gets perpetuated by people. Wikipedia does some very evil things, and it's not just to this, to the COVID thing. More and more an attempt at a world control through the EU, through various elites. You have organizations like BlackRock, which is and Billy was told about it. He was described this shadow government, which would be a capitalistic force that would be created in 1988, and it would be a shadow government, one of the shadow governments to the US, because he was told early on the CIA is the real government, and it's actually a world government. And he exposed all that in articles we have. I mean, there's things, he revealed the Microsoft backdoor into computers before it was exposed by Snow. Pardon me, I don't know what's kicking through me here, but
No, it's all good. It's all good. You've been doing a lot, and I know you've blown my mind several times tonight. So so wait, he exposed Snowden or the
no, he exposed the Microsoft backdoor into computers and the CIA Microsoft alliance.
right.
We've got the document. I have them on my website for 8 years or whatever. Billy has stepped out on so many limbs exposing things, and and if there is they published a whole thing on what were real conspiracies and what weren't, which is very interesting. The problem with the conspiratorial mindset today, people who have no control over their minds. And
I was going to say, is there nothing in there about Hollywood pedophiles and elites eating children? Nothing really, right?
No, but he back in the 50s even, he was foretelling the abuse and the high level of pedophilia that would, be exposed. Listen, my mother told me in the late 50s about the Catholic Church. I remember it still, and I don't know why she ever told me. Something came up, and I don't know, 10 years old, and she's talking about the terrible things that my mother had been an orphan in a Catholic, maybe this is how she knew, in a Catholic orphanage in Germany. And I think even been in a convent brief, whatever, but she knew about it. And she said, the Catholic Church for centuries has just molested boys, young boys, and of course girls too, but mainly young boys. And that you have people who are just doing vile things. It doesn't matter whether somebody is heterosexual or homosexual. It doesn't matter. Like Meier has written, he says, you have to understand every human being has the right to be unmolested, to life. And whatever a person's sexual orientation and preferences are is not to be infringed upon by society. You're not to condemn people because if women are men and men, or men and women. Yes, when you have an abusive thing where you have children, human beings well below the age of consent, that is wrong, and you've got to protect that. But this society, the religions are so hypocritical with what they've done and how they persecute people of different persuasions. The witches, there's a whole thing in the environment. I just came upon that about how so-called witches, women, and some men, when they wanted to get rid of some guy who was causing trouble with the women, were persecuted. It was horrific what they did to women and children. And so religion is one of the evil twin siblings. The poisonous, mind-enslaving, violence and bloodthirsty, self-human created thing has nothing to do with spiritual truth. Religions have adopted certain things from the truth, and that way, because here's the other, to me, what I came to think of, you know what? I know a lot of religious people, good, bad, and indifferent. People, most people that I've known who gravitated, not that were just raised and mindlessly adopted, but who gravitated towards a certain religion, they did so because they wanted to do good. They believe in good, and they believe that there's a meaning to life and that there's something above themselves and that created life. And so here come, well, step right up. We've got 20 of these things. Choose the one that you think is right. And then you're the authority, and you can go lecture people and tell them that they're wrong if they don't believe it. And you've got this craziness that goes on with all this stuff. But the people who want the truth and who want to do good and who donate things and who are generous and,
What about the Vatican? What do they know?
oh, they know the truth here because they know that Meier's spirit form was the spirit form of a man named Emmanuel that they utilized and crafted into an imaginary Jesus Christ. And they
So
know
wait, you're
more.
saying Myers is technically a descendant of the Messiah. He is technically the closest thing we have.
Let's try to be clear.
I know. I'm putting words in your mouth,
It's
but
fine. No, it's fine. The spirit, remember, the spirit is an impersonal thing. My spirit isn't Michael Horn. My personality is Michael Horn. You're Greg. This is Jane, and this is Judy, and this is Phil. But we're not. It's like we're not. Let's just say Albert Einstein. Let's just take something non-religious. He died. Now there's another person who's the reincarnation of Einstein's spirit, but he's not Albert Einstein. He doesn't have anything to do with Albert Einstein. But in this case, there's a spirit form that agreed. Again, this is not to be believed. I cannot prove it. It's simply the story. And in a way, it doesn't matter. It's not to make somebody believe something. What they said is, okay, here's what it is. Here's Nocodemian. He comes to earth. There's Enoch. There's Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, Muhammad, and the final one who will have this ever evolving. It isn't even the same. It's an evolved spirit form because all spirit forms evolve. This will be a guy named Billy Meier. He's not Emmanuel. I like to say, well, you consider him the second helping if you want, but he's simply the seventh and final prophet.
final. Why is there no more after Billy? Or is there somebody that could come after?
No, because there's no need for it. We don't need saviors. We needed prophets, contactees who would take as intermediary with the extraterrestrials who had access to the spiritual teaching that had been brought to their worlds. And also they knew when each time, as is true with Meier, when that prophet would be present, that prophet would have access to the original spiritual teaching as well so that he could deliver it.
But that scares me, Michael. I mean, this is an 85-year-old man. What happens if, if we lose Billy in this human form? You said the spirit goes on, but there's not going to be somebody after him? I mean, what are we supposed to do?
We don't need anybody. Look, we will always there will be people who will come forward as leaders and maybe as minor prophets or spiritual teachers, take this teaching in its form, who learn it and are capable to teach it extensively in all of its aspects and manifestations in terms of this very extensive thing. I'm a junior. I'm just going to go. I'm thinking I'm going to keep. Okay. But each time there will be people who will come forward to point to it, who will live, also people who won't even know about it, but who will live in harmony with truth. And there are people these days who have nothing to do with Billy Meier and the teaching. They're good people, and they live in a harmony with the laws of nature. There are many people in primitive tribes who actually live more in harmony with the truth than with all of our sophisticated people because they haven't screwed everything up. They still live in harmony with the life, with those creatures, right? And they may not be all intellectual and fancy, and they don't have technologies, but they can live, and they're evolving. They are evolving as we have come from that, all of us. At one time, in one place, we might have had we might have been part of this race at one point and that tribe at another. Everybody on earth has been, their spirit forms have been reincarnating at least for 1,000,000 or more years. And we don't remember that, thank goodness. We wouldn't want to remember being chased by the saber-tooths and hacked to pieces by the Vikings. So we get along, and at a time when it's to our benefit and we can handle such a thing, we will then start to have the abilities, far more advanced incarnations, not now, to draw upon consciously. Sometimes we do draw upon unconsciously. When you get into the spiritual teaching, the creation energy teaching, there's parts of us that are unconsciously or subconsciously from day one drawing upon the past life things in certain way. This is beyond what you get from Buddhism, which has a really unpleasant history. Not the original guy Siddhartha, whose life was very different. We know this from the information in this case, much more about the real Siddhartha and how he lived and the family he came from, and his own lamenting how this would be turned into this crazy, also a crazy cult. So a lot of nice ideas, harmlessness and all this good stuff. But we have a book out from a guy who researched Buddhism, connected, and he got information also from Meier. And oh my gosh, Richard Gere, he would have a real hard time with that.
Well, oh my gosh, we'll have to have a whole other episode debunking Buddhism. But wait a minute. So, and there's a lot of stuff we haven't covered here. I mean, you've given so much of your time, and that's because there is just so much. I mean, the more I'm digging into this, the more I see there's a metal alloy that was given to him that apparently can't be explained.
It was examined, and people attack it, of course. It was examined by a man named Marcel Vogel at IBM. And Marcel Vogel was a child prodigy when he was a kid. At the time he was 10 or 12, he had synthesized the chemicals that create bioluminescence in fireflies. I'm a 10 or 12 bouncing a ball against a wall, okay? So, and of course, he was hired by IBM without any actual degrees. He was a genius who could do, those who can't do, teach. And of course, there are many great teachers and many great scientists. I'm not knocking that, but he was a great scientist. He went out, he worked with crystals and all, he's attacked for that. Anyhow, he analyzed this, he did electron microscopic analysis, and he said, hey, I can't make this. I cannot make this with any technology available to me as a scientist on Earth. So naturally, he's attacked by the skeptics. There's sound recordings. I briefly knew one of the sound engineers who analyzed and said, well, we couldn't duplicate them with the synthesizers of the day either. It goes on and on like this. And all of the UFO experts and all the skeptics, what can they bring to the table? Their tall tales and their attacks. Not one piece of evidence. And this man, Meier, he lets it be. He just says, well, up to each person.
What about the law of one teachings?
I only know a little bit about that, and and how it came out supposedly Ra.
Channeled stuff from Ra. Yeah.
Channeled stuff. The channeled stuff probably came from people reading stuff who then thought they were going to channel it. And I know that David Wilcock, and I've got a friend who just called me out of the blue yesterday, a guy I've known for over 50 years who wrote a book on Wilcock. He thinks he's channeling the Elohim, the creator gods of Earth or whatever, the universe. There's no such thing. They were human beings. They died. We know names. Everybody comes up with cockamamie stuff. Now there's stuff in the law of one, I'm sure, as there is in every religion. True, there is good stuff in every religion. For instance, if people did one thing, which is in every religion in one form or another, and they only followed do unto others as others would do unto you, or have done unto themselves, that's the law of cause and effect right there. It's just right. Conscious. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Because
do you think the occult in all those fields are just butchered, or is there anything to magic or hermeticism, anything like that?
Not being really deeply schooled and only superficial, what I would say is this. What works, because some of this Meier's explained as well, what works about any kind of magic is a placebo or nocebo effect.
Oh,
People that,
wow.
yes, yeah,
Interesting. So he believed in hypnosis in a way.
believe in what? Hypnosis?
Yeah, yeah. Just the
Well,
idea, the power of suggestion.
well, and Meyer writes about it, and it can be very useful. And placebo effect has a beneficial effect. I know someone who's in medicine. I won't say more about it, is into the Meyer material and is written about the placebo effect utilizing info from Meyer. And he works at a very high level in medicine. And he also has written about the nocebo effect. And it's just like, because energy follows thought, the might of the thoughts. If you focus and dwell on that which is negative, you get the negative. If that's what you enjoy, you're happy with, it's fine. If you focus on the positive, ultimately you are led to that. But there must be both. That's the
Yeah.
difference here.
Do Meyer's
And
teachings teach you about elevating your consciousness? Or, I mean, there are a lot of people that talk about that. The ancient alien stuff points to that the Egyptians and the Mayans, Aztecs, they had far superior powers. They could communicate with each other telepathically, they could levitate. I mean, is there anything out there in the Myers material about having abilities beyond our current human
yeah,
form?
you'll like this. There's stuff we have on the blog, and I'll tell you what it's called so you can do it. But long ago, they also spoke about the pyramid, the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, and the fact that worldwide there are pyramids, all of which were basically constructed initially at the same time. I think it's 72,000 plus years ago. They had been, the Great Pyramids and the pyramids at Giza had originally been built with the help, not completely by, with the help of certain beings from the Orion galaxy. Now, there's more to this, and it gets kind of interesting. The pyramids had been rebuilt at different times historically when certain things fell to disrepair. And at a certain point in history, information was inscribed on the exterior, warning of astronomical events that were coming, that were going to disrupt the earth, which did come, but were properly acted upon by some wise kings in Egypt and all. There was the most recent remodeling, if you will, of the Great Pyramid was just a few thousand years ago. So there are things that don't remain any longer from the original and some that do. Now, from the Orion galaxy, there were beings that had certain telekinetic, certain highly developed mental abilities, which were used in concert with the physical labors that were done to build the pyramids. Now, recently, we had two articles that were put up on the Fly blog, and you'll find them when you look for ancient Earth people or ancient human beings, because in Meyer's material, he speaks quite a bit about, or a reasonable amount, about what are called the long skulls. And these,
Right.
right?
We hear about
These,
this a lot.
yes. And they came to Egypt, and in some cases, they became rulers in Egypt. And they helped with, these are the ones, I think. And in South America, and when you look, their artwork, their sculptures, their pyramids, all of them
Oh,
were
whoa.
similar. And there was a guy from, there were also negative ETs that got based among the Aztecs, I think it was. And those negative ETs had blood sacrifices they conducted. This is what I'm saying, when you understand why the Plejarens and why this mission, we have a bloodthirsty history, and some of it came from the ETs who set it in motion. Well, in Egypt, there was an extraterrestrial whose name was Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent.
Right.
And
Associated with
he,
2012. I remember people talking a lot about
right.
Quetzal
But
around
they also got
2012.
a lot wrong about that too. So, I mean, it just
Of
goes on.
course, it got that was a money grab thing for a lot of people too. Um, but yes.
So Quetzalcoatl came to the South American ETs of a different race to try to convince them to stop doing the human sacrifice thing. And they basically ran him off. It didn't work. So he went back. And then the long skulls eventually either died out or may have been overthrown. There's some information. Sometimes I don't get to read everything I put up because I'm going through things
What about the
fast.
Nephilim? The Nephilim, the
Those
giants that roamed the
came,
earth.
Yeah, well, this is in the Meier material. There were beings who came or who arose on Earth through the procreation between a certain extraterrestrial race and Earth women, gave birth to these humans that then grew massively up to 33 feet. I can't even imagine it. Yeah.
They really don't talk about this stuff in school. This is wild.
Well, this stuff, the thing about it is when you get into it, there are books and pages and articles in Meier material where they delve into the histories. And yes, the giants that were on Earth. And yes, the very small people that were here that actually were based, some of whom lived in Switzerland, right at the area where Meier has his center and his home, used to be something called Lake Sonura. And there were these tiny little beings that lived there. They were dwarfs, and all over the Meier's property, kind of as an homage to them, he's got these cute little corny statues of like gnomes and elves and what have you. But they were a whole race of beings who, when the Lake Sonura flooded through that area, and they all were, drowned or run off, and then in time, the waters had receded, and it's now this particular. It's a beautiful property. I just wish I could go again. It doesn't look like it with the travel, but they actually, one woman there got a photograph. There was a dwarf race of highly advanced beings who came to that property, Myers, to clean it energetically. And she caught a half photo of one of them. And then there's footprints from the tiny people and footprints from some of the big ones who've been there. Oh my gosh.
Are leprechauns real?
I think they're based on real beings. I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, there are dwarfs, there are very tiny humans, and there are, throughout the universe, there are different sized people, and people with more, we've already talked about more than 5 fingers, perhaps some with less, maybe one eye, like a cyclopsian being, and people of different amphibian looking people, not the reptilian creatures that
there's this the archons, these scary lizard reptilians of the New World Order.
You just have somebody sitting at the CIA saying, let's see, what should we give them? Archon, yeah, you turn that word into, and okay, fine. And let's get some really crazy shit in here. And then they get it, to the people in ufology, and the next thing you know,
what do you think? The New World Order, all that stuff, is that complete BS? The Rothschilds, the Morgan Stanley.
This is what was very interesting in the Meier material. There's not just one mega power that runs everything. There are a number of mega powers that vie with each other as well. There are various elite and various, families, maybe banking and all this stuff, but it's not yet under one control. And the EU has sought and is seeking to do that. And they will get pretty far with some stuff, but they will falter too. It will get overthrown. It's going to be bad for a while. There is going to be globalization with biochipping shit that is, that people don't fight against. And Meier wrote long ago, people must stand up or they will be enslaved. And you look at the way people roll over already in this country for all the stuff that's being done, and in the name of this disease, and how this separate, the discriminate. And Meier saw this when he was, I think, 9 or 10. The vaccinated and the unvaccinated, the discrimination. It is the new Nazism. It is the new Nazism, and make no mistake about it. It's adopted by those who feel that, because you have to understand, there's so much money in the pharmaceuticals, there's so much money to get people to do certain things who normally might not do those things. And when they are running this division between the vaccinated and the have to carry a car, this is, most people alive today, the younger people, they don't remember anything. Nazism was ending when I was just a kid. They don't remember what that was about. This is the new Nazism, and it's helped by this, what is it, the World Forum thing, that we get all these young leaders together who will do.
World Economic Forum?
That's it. And you've got this like Jacinda in New Zealand, who I thought at first, well, she seems like a cool person. Oh, this girl can't wait to lock everybody up. And you just trust us. We are your source of the true information. And people are stupid. They fall for this shit. It's like, get the hell out of here. Go take the garbage out, you moron. You think I believe anything, let alone you? And people are they're weak. I'm sorry to say this. They're too weak to stand up for themselves. They're too weak to think for themselves. And this is why now, forget the elite and all that stuff can only pull this off if people are namby-pamby and willing to roll over and buy into any damn thing, whether it's left or right. You've got, pardon me, you've got them on the right. I'm a patriot. Trump, bring him in. Meier's material about Trump, they even went into his past personalities. And I'm not going to go into that, except to say that this guy has fooled all these poor people. I was saying this to people before I ever saw anything from Meier. This guy's a psychopath, a narcissist, and he sees he can play these people on the right with the patriot card, and they never stop to think, this guy's a multi-gazillionaire, and all those medicines he got when he came down with COVID, he could afford to send that out all over the country. He could afford to put out hermetically sealed quarantines. He could afford the millionaires, the billionaires in this country, the multi-billionaires. Among them, when I looked it up, they had a combined wealth of over 10 point something trillion dollars. They could have come forward for the people that have helped make their wealth possible, their brothers and sisters in this country, and said, we're going to stop this thing. We'll do whatever it takes. Nah, these people are narcissists. They're pigs. They're nothing more than slobs that want to feed at the trough. And because the country has allowed itself to worship, so-and-so is a billionaire, or Kim Kardashian's butt waddles across the screen with gold chain around it. Yeah, no, I got no use for this stuff. And you know what? I don't have nothing against Kim Kardashian. I mean, she's doing her thing, but there's people that elevate mindlessness to such a high people. Can you not figure out what's worth something and what isn't worth anything? So we get the result, cause and effect. People can say, oh, you're wrong, you're crazy, it's all good. Okay, time will tell. I don't think it looks good right now. And I don't say
right.
It's for it. And we've tried, everybody that I know with the Meier material, we've tried since we've got a clue, since day one, to bring it forward to people so they could find it and think it through for themselves.
Now, wait a minute. Tell me this. Antarctica and UFOs. Anything there?
According to the little I read in the Meier material, there was no Nazi base there that ever evolved. They might have fled there. Now, they remember, and Meier hasn't commented that I know of on Bird or any of that. Remember, though, that he has said there is a mega entity underneath, but they are located more, from what I deduced, under the Gobi Desert, Himalayas and all that. They're not at Antarctica or the Antarctica.
Got it.
But I'm not making a definitive statement about any of that because I don't know.
What about that Israeli space defense guy that said there's a galactic federation? Yes. Trying to sell books?
Yeah. I mean, if the real Galactic Federation, which is one that the Plejarens, and they don't call themselves the Galactic for the Brotherhood, the real Federation of extraterrestrials spend their time 6 times a month doing a peace meditation on behalf of us, which those 30-something thousand people on Earth already who know about it do it. Today was the last day of the first weekend. It's 20 minutes long. Anybody that wants to learn it can do it. And it just contributes to the true peace energy. It's a very ancient meditation from an extraterrestrial race that carries frequencies that are intended through the might of the thoughts to help to bring peace. No obligation, but anybody wants to know. We have monthly meetings of people who once a month with one group, maybe more with others, get together to talk about. It's leaderless. This is not about, well, so-and-so is the leader of the Meier group here or there. No, we're responsible for thinking for ourselves, not to have people tell us how it's supposed to be. And Americans love to create cults. We don't have any part of that stuff. Nobody's ever knocked at anybody's door looking, hi, I'd like you to join the Billy Meier cult. Woo, free sex, free love. No, it hasn't. That's right, aliens, another Swiss
Right.
group. Cuckoo stuff. It's
Very interesting. I mean, I do
Yeah.
find it. Well, look, everybody needs to check out theylivblog.com.
They fly. They fly blog.
Oh, they live. They live. I'm too into the New World Order. Yes, theyflyvlog.com. Wow, I mean, look, you're making me question all these other great people in the UFO space. Now I know you're not saying everybody isn't telling the truth, but you think a majority of them are completely distorting the ET experience.
My thing is, I like to say I'm persona au gratin in the ET UFO world, because I don't have good things to say about the people, because I've followed them as well for the past 20 years. I've reached out to all of them. I've asked them for their evidence. I've asked them for their help. I've asked them to come forward and be truthful. And so far, not a one, certainly of the ones that you are familiar with, have done it. I think but that's my, he's just he's sour on that. So the real way to do it, in my opinion, and I would do it this way, is I would say, okay, well, I think so-and-so has said that they're a genuine contactee. Now, this guy I had on, Michael Horn, he chatted with us for 15 minutes or so, and he said that evidence, where's the evidence and the independent analysis? So tell me, Corey, tell me,
What about Keys of Enoch? What's wrong with Keys of Enoch? That seems pretty legit. The Hertax work.
Hertax work, I can't comment fully because I haven't read it all. I once leafed through some, but here's my statement. It's like this. I call it the mother lode. Let's say there's people that are out there, they're all looking to find, it's miners. They want to find the mother lode. It's rumored to still exist, this one mine. And there's all these miners. And then one day, a guy stumbles into the salon where everybody's sitting around, or saloon rather, in those days. And he says, I found it. I found the mother lode. And I tell you what, folks, I sequestered for myself more money and more wealth than I can use in 10 lifetimes. And you'll never find what I got. But here's where the rest of it is. And there's more than enough for all of you. Here it is, free. Go get it. Now, if that's so, and if people go, now some other guy walks in and he says, well, I found a place where there's a gold mine, or it's rumored to be maybe if you keep digging, or this guy over here said we've got it. We found the mother lode. We can be greedy. I mean, there's so much here for greedy. We can keep, but what do we need? What do you have to offer? What is the only thing I care about is the truth. I don't care if it came from Stephen Bassett or Stephen Greer or any of these people. And in the early days of this, when I started doing lectures in 1987, after, God, this is fantastic. I was the opening act for the guy who was doing the Meier lectures in the 80s. I was doing, and I said to him one day, I want to do these lectures. And he said, here's some slides, go do it. And I started doing it myself. And then in Switzerland, they asked him to not do it anymore, because the reason I wanted to do it, he was changing stuff, and he was a great lecturer. I don't know why he bothered, but he was messing it up. And I said, I'm going to do it the way you want it. And I created a contract with Billy Meier. They created it with me starting in 2004. Every 7 years, we renew it. And what does it say? Basically, I will go out there, I present the material as it is. I will not receive money from Billy Meier to do it. I will not pay him money. I will do it, and I will just keep it. And I'm free to say I don't know or I disagree. I just want to do it so that this time I can at least contribute to
Do
helping.
you make money? How do you make money? I'm worried
Yeah,
about you.
okay. I'll tell you when I make money. I don't mind telling you. First of all, anytime I've gone to lecture UFO things, those at, sometimes it's $150. I made more than that once when people brought me to Hong Kong. I do my blog for free. I do my interviews for free, of course. I do everything else for free. I will make money if people will buy my films or my books. And I'm light touch on that because I don't feel that it's right to make it a big promotional thing. And at the same time, it's there. If you like all the rest of it, you want more, thank you very much. I've made 4 films. I'm making another one. Here's all the books we've got from Billy. You know, geez, it's the greatest stuff on earth. But you can do it all for free.
Yeah. There's a
So
lot out there. I mean, this website is filled with stuff. Tons of
okay,
stuff.
ask Stephen Greer to do it all for free and to give the money back to all the people that he conned out of it with this free energy bullshit.
Ha ha. Yeah,
Uh,
man. What about Edgar Mitchell? I mean, Edgar Mitchell, like, it was Edgar Mitchell conned by Stephen Greer?
I don't know enough about that. I know that Edgar Mitchell started something with a conviction to try to find the truth about stuff. A lot of the astronauts had seen things, and I sent him information while he was alive about the Meier case, and I thought there might be a chance. But fortunately, while I didn't get a chance to see that realized, it was great that you know
Gordon Cooper.
Gordon Cooper just put it out there straight. I
Yeah.
mean, and look, the astronauts were trained. They were trained in photography. They had to know what was a natural anomalous object, what might not be, because NASA knew they didn't want the astronauts suddenly going, holy cow, okay, you might see some stuff. You can refer to it as a bogey or don't say anything, or they had their protocols, of course. And I know people who are involved with, well, I have a NASA aerospace guy. He's no longer at NASA. He endorsed the Meier case. A guy who was vice president of operations, orbital competitor to Musk. He endorsed the Meier case. He's got a friend who's still OSI and all this stuff. He said the Meier case. They know, but maybe it's not their battle. It's the battle of the ordinary person who'd like to see this world and their country survive, who either gets off their ass and does something, just even for themselves. You don't have to go pound them doors. So you can send inquiries. You can ask me, well, if I was to send something to somebody, what would it be? Also, here, look at this stuff. Send them Joe Tisk's, the OSI guy. Send him his article. Send them the article from the lawyer. Send them this, send them that. Ask them why they've never covered this.
Yeah, I'm wondering why does it this is crazy. I mean, we hear about Betty and Barney Hill. We hear about the Phoenix Lights. We hear about all these things, but Meyer's stuff is not really covered that much. I know we
No.
talked about this at the beginning, but I mean, what do you think? Okay, here's my real question before we end all of this, because I've been so grateful for your time, Michael. This has been, I mean, there's just so much mind blowing stuff. I might need to recover to take all this in. Um, why, if there are people out there that, I mean, I'm kind of amazed that Coast to Coast has had you on in light of the fact that this Billy Meier stuff isn't covered in this way, because there are people out there that do documentaries. We've seen a lot of documentaries recently about the UFO phenomenon and people coming on and some of the names I mentioned before and all of them. But then nobody taps the Billy Meier thing, it seems. What do you think that is? I mean, not because these people are trying to sell stuff, but is it just because these other people are out there promoting themselves more, and the Billy Meier people are just kind of like, nah, this is here and we're not selling anything? Is that what you think the reason is? Or is there an active agenda to hide Billy's things? I mean, what is going on with the UFO curators, if you will, not going into this as much?
Well, I don't know which ones you mean, but I want to tell you a couple things since you touched on it. I was interviewed on Coast to Coast about 20 times. And the last time was, I think, February 21st, 2020. And at that time, I mentioned something because I'd been interviewed on an ABC TV news show in San Diego on January 23rd. And it was either, okay, so I was interviewed And at the time I was interviewed on the TV news show on ABC, the coronavirus thing had just happened. And the woman said to me, well, what are some of the urgent things? I said, well, there's this thing called the coronavirus, and Billy Meier mentioned it. And that was the first time. So when I mentioned it on Coast to Coast, I didn't have any more info. Now, here's what happened. And I'm okay. On about the 23rd of February, I received the stuff that I published on the 25th. On the 27th, I think it was, I contacted the producer for George Nori, and I said to her, Lisa, I'd like to go back on George for just 10 minutes because I got the information from Billy and the Plejarens about what this virus is really about. And the real scoop on this is far more than what, no, you were on. I said, wait, Lisa, I got the information, but this 10, 12 minutes pounding my head again. You're not a doctor. I said, I'm not a doctor. I wouldn't come on as a doctor. Just give people the opportunity to know about. No. So on behalf of George Nori, she blocked this information from the million or millions of people on Coast to Coast who could have had access to it February 27th, starting at that point, 2020, they would have known all the details. And I won't enumerate them right now, but they all turned out to be true. And I put online on that blog something, not only that, harsh truths from the Plejarens, new online COVID test that currently has 36 items, including the 12 from that first thing, 36 items that I found where, to the best of my knowledge in searching, critical long COVID, Wuhan, you name it, really, clots, all this terrible stuff. We were the first. I was the first person in America to publish it in English.
This is, everybody check for yourself.
Check it out. Find out.
He's not hiding it.
The WHO and the CDC declared this a pandemic. I think the date is March 11th. I published it February 25th. And Billy Meier first published it February 3rd. Way ahead of all of this and everything else that came. Just do your due diligence. Now, as I've said, and I may even say on the blog, I might have missed something where somebody else published it at the same time or earlier. In one or two cases, Meier's only a week or two in advance, but he's in advance. And as you even asked, I think at the beginning of the show, we have blogs there where he said, in India, there will be this number, 300,000. In Brazil, and this and that. And then this will hit, and there will be a new variant. It's there before it happens. Before it happens. And I have to update those and put those in because those are hits too. He published it 3-4 weeks before we have the official numbers. And none of these geniuses, including the lovely doctors who are fighting for the truth to come out. I've sent it to Stu Peters. I've sent it to Jane Ruby. They all want to keep their face on the thing. Go ahead. And you're going to be ignored by too many people. How do you ignore a copyright? I've got a guy I know over 50 years, another one, doctor in Minnesota, tries to give me this, vaccination will save the nation. I said to him, Dick, sorry, pal, that ain't happening. And I've published all these accurate things before any of your medical heroes. What's wrong with you? Copyright. And these people, they don't want to touch it. Their whole worldview falls apart. You have to understand this one lawyer, he recognized it. I ran this, not the COVID thing, the Meier case. I was in Vegas in 2013 at a MUFON event. They gave me a table for whatever reason, put stuff on. A guy comes over, older guy, shaking his head. And I said, hi, can I help you? Yeah, I'm into UFOs. I'm interested in this. This Billy Meier, this can't be true. Okay, sir, what do you do? I'm a retired judge. I said, may I step in your courtroom, Your Honor? And the guy was so cool right away. Okay, how can I help you? I said, Your Honor, let's make this simple. If I tell you that my friend in Switzerland published the information about Mercury the surface of that planet contracting, the reason for it being the metal core. He publishes before NASA. Would I have to prove that to you, that he published it before NASA? He said, well, of course you have to prove it. I said, so if I take this book and I open it up and I show you this copyright date and I show you this conversation where he gets that information 20 years before NASA, who prevails in your courtroom? You do. How much is the book? How much is the film? How much is he understands? This is the difference between somebody who understands basic law, legal standard of proof. First publication doesn't mean it's true, means he published it first. Well, is it true? Yeah, we found out it was true 20 years later. NASA discovered it, so it's true. No, he was told it, and then they confirmed it later. So this is the problem here.
Now, of course, the biggest expose, right? Supposed expose, and I know there are articles, is the Kelkorff book.
Oh, Kelkorff. I just shut Kelkorff down so badly. First of all, Kelkorff's book has been ripped apart by 3 really good investigators who just showed it was utter nonsense. Here's what happened. 2004, Santa Clara, I guess it's 2004, at that same thing where I met David Wilcott, a guy comes up to me and he's talking to me and he's a little funny. He says, I kind of owe you an apology, or Billy Meier. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, this is my card. His name is Garrett Morris. And he said, I'm an illustrator. And then he pulled out Kelkorff's card. And he said, this man hired me to take Billy Meier's photos and put lines in them and everything else. He told me he wanted to see if it was possible. And then he took what I did and published it, claiming that that was Billy Meier's. And I'm here to tell you, I'm the person that did that. And I'm so sorry. He wrote an article about it. It's on my website, Garrett Morris, Kelkorff. If you start going through this stuff or ask me links. And he said, and he wrote it. And he said, no. Now, then a bunch of other people started debunking and they ripped Kelkorff's book apart. So Kelkorff recently was trying to attack me again. And I opened it up. I said, I'll debate Kelkorff and all these skeptics. Here's 12 points. This is what you have to answer first if you want. Well, they decided they wouldn't do that. They had their own attacking Billy Meier and me fest on a Zoom meeting. And I said, you've got to come here. I said, no, you guys, you have to substantiate this stuff. So Kelkorff wouldn't substantiate it. Then Kelkorff brags about how he had gone to Switzerland in disguise under fake names to try to trap the Billy Meier cult, none such exists, never met with Meier, and carried a hidden camera with a peephole in a bag or a box or something, and secretly was filming children without their parents' knowledge. So I posted, since this guy, I posted, well, is Kelkorff a pedophile on top of everything else? Boy, Kelkorff disappeared very fast from the scene. This is what this guy's about. I mean, here's, okay, one more Kelkorff story, since you brought it up. 2009, I've already debated Kelkorff, kind of kicked his butt on a radio debate, pops back up. Let's do a joint DVD project, Michael. I'll do the anti-Meier thing. It'll be very nice, but you do the pro-Meier thing and we'll put out a joint DVD set. I said, fine, I don't care. I don't care. And no grudges against anybody. You want to do that? All right. I know Meier is real. So I write to Billy Meier in November in Switzerland. And I said, Kelkorff has approached me to do this thing, and he writes back, well, do whatever you want. You're free. You do what you think. Then 2 days later, I get an email from Billy's assistant, a guy named Christian Frenner there. Billy asks you to just wait before you go ahead. We're translating a contact Billy had. He asked the Plejarens about this because he wasn't so sure. And he asked them to look into it. I said, okay, fine, whatever. The next day I get this article, and this, by the way, is on my website, all the thing. And one of the Plejarens comes to him and this little formal greeting. Hi, I understand you wanted so-and-so to look into this, and here's what we found out. Michael Horn doesn't know what's going on here. This Kelkorff guy has got a real agenda to attack you, Billy, to attack Michael, to attack the work, and to use Michael to disseminate it in DVDs. And they get, yeah, you know, it's like, we are recommending Michael might want to not do this thing. He's a little naive here.
Right.
And they also had some words that they said Kelkorff is an intriguer who has some serious mental issues and paranoia and all, and he's just out to do as much harm as he can, and it's too bad. So I contacted Kelkorff and I said, listen, Kel, I'm going to back away from this project. You do whatever you want. I'm going to defer. And no, you've got to do this with me. Please, you can. I said, no. And finally he said, well, why? I said, listen, I have finally some advice from Switzerland. It's not a productive thing for me to involve. Well, as soon as that was expressed, the next day, Kelkorff's website, which formerly had us practically running through the fields, you know, throwing flowers with each other. Michael Horn, wonderful friend of mine, we're going to 300 attacks against Meier. The website, you didn't know what hit you. Death threats.
Oh my gosh.
And I succeeded in doing something that I don't know if anybody else ever did. I had his website taken down by 3 separate web hosting companies, domestic and international, because it was so crazy. And then we popped up again a 4th time. I thought, I think I'm not going to do anything. At least I will find out what he's doing now. This guy was so vile. He was threatening. I mean, bad news. And he had discredited himself with people who were the web hosting companies by what he had done, separate stuff. So he's just a guy that got off on the wrong tangent. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have anything against him personally. It sounds stupid, but he's just an intriguer who he's endlessly trying to make up nonsense.
Right.
And probably he had support early on from the intelligence community and some stuff. And he never even had the courage to go knock on Billy's door. He didn't have the honesty to say, this is who I am and this is what I'm about, because his excuse was, I'm going to, if I told them who I was, they would throw me out or whatever. Well, maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, but how do you know unless you're just honest? He's not an honest person. And that is just his psyche and his consciousness. I don't want to be in there when that collapses.
So look, speaking of collapsing psyches, to round this up, the movie Don't Look Up. What do we do about this cataclysm?
Well, here's what I would say if you really want to know what to do, because I'm going to try to do this, but again, I don't want to be the lone one. Anybody that would like to be a hero in this world, really, first you'd have to read the information about Apophis, the stuff that we have, the stuff NASA. You have to, first of all, decide for yourself if this seems real to you. And then if you're interested in helping, you would reach out to the people, the actors, the producers, the publicists, anybody connected with this. I think Leonardo DiCaprio, I mean, they're hard to reach people. They're so filtered, with the other people. But these are good people. They wouldn't have done this if they, if they didn't have some inkling. I think he's an environmentally concerned person. Jennifer Lawrence seems like a straight shooter. Help us get what we have to them. It's free. Give it all to them. I've been living Don't Look Up for 20 years, trying to get the ears of somebody to say, listen, this is real. I reached out to scientists. I've got friends. I'm part of something called the A-Team. There's NASA, former orbital guy, a physicist in Sweden, scientist in England, and other people, all who know that the Meier information on Apophis is more accurate than anything NASA has, unless they're now paying attention to it. So anybody wants to help, could we use it? This we know where this will hit, according to the Plejarens, between the North Sea and Black Sea. If that hits there, tens of millions of people, lives either immediately or shortly thereafter gone. Earth is cracking open, gases, tsunamis, nuclear power plants blowing. People,
Was the movie just a coincidence or was it predictive programming?
I don't know. This is why when I saw it, I thought these people, I mean, you've got to understand when Tic Tac video came out, I had tried for years to get on a, well, I've lectured, I've done some college lecturing. A skeptical professor brought me in twice up here in Arizona. He, he said, you've got to lecture to my, because why? Because I gave him the information on attacks on Paris from radical Islam in November, several days before the attacks occurred. He told his wife, holy cow, I already knew about this. So this guy, we'd been meeting every Saturday for lunch, and he's a skeptic. He said, you got to come. He had me come in and lecture twice, but I couldn't get on a regular lecture circuit with booking agents or any of these. And UFOs, oh no, that's all nonsense. So suddenly the Pentagon puts out the silly Tic Tac thing, which is really probably from the race underneath here. Suddenly, and then Lou Elizondo pops up. I will always tell the truth. I will fight for the full disclosure. So I tweeted to him, hey Lou, what's the truth about the Billy Meier case? Wouldn't answer. So I found, what's his name, Christopher Mellon, who'd been on Joe Rogan.
Yeah, right.
I sent an email to him on LinkedIn, and I said to him I sent him links to Meier stuff. And guess what he says to me? Exactly. What was I thinking? A senior moment. He knows Meier's real. He won't talk about it. Then I got a hold of Danny Sheehan, who's Lou Elizondo's attorney, and I recorded it. I said, Danny, I'm talking about this. Oh yeah, I know Billy Meier. I'm on with him 10 minutes or something. He knows about Billy Meier stuff. He won't come forward. So this is all so orchestrated. These people are so bought off. And who's going to suffer for it? Help us
Yeah.
stop Apophis, at least something.
Oh my gosh, this is pretty scary stuff. Um, it is. But I mean, at the end of the day, why Luis Alessandro? I mean, is it just because it's so out of left field? These shots are because I'm going, look, Michael, I know it seems to mean a lot to you, and you're encouraging people to do critical thinking, but I'm going, well, it's kind of a radical thing to suggest that these photos are real and that people can just go to this website and immediately go, oh, well, all these photos mean this guy's telling the truth. I mean, how do you believe that? I could, in other words, I empathize with people that dismiss it immediately because you're looking at a guy that's talking about aliens. So how are you going to take his predictions about all this other stuff seriously? I mean, have you thought about that? That there's a PR problem here?
It's simpler than this. Look, in terms of the UFO stuff, on the blog and on my website, I've got links to all the independent expert scientific analyses, one after another. These people analyze this stuff. Then I've got where state-of-the-art, more recent analyses were done, where the analysts said, here's the software we used to analyze all this stuff from the 70s. Anybody can analyze this. That means anybody that's serious just about the UFO part, you can do the same thing. We've got a thing up there where do this to take one of Meier's UFO photos right off of my website, drop it into Photoshop, adjust contrast and brightness. Suddenly it's not a gold object against a black curtain. It's a real craft above a hillside and a gravel road, and you do it yourself. Okay, that's if you care about the UFO part. If you want to know if this guy's really meeting with extraterrestrials, start looking through the hundreds of prophecies, specific things on every planet, black holes, floods, fires, volcanic eruptions, assassinations, terror. I mean, the WTC, it's all there. And I won't go into that one right now real deeply, but it's all there. And it
Right.
just a person has to go, well, How do I know this is true? On one page, like you're on my regular website, theyfly.com, there's something at the top that says corroboration and evidence. Theyfly.com, corroboration and evidence, right?
Yeah.
Click on that. Now, there, and don't worry about the first things you see. There should be about 7 items at the top of the page of evidence and this and that, right? Just 7 things down there. And there's the green line underneath it.
Right, right.
Now, below the green line, scroll down a good little bit, and suddenly you start to see contact number such and such.
Yeah, wow, there's a lot here.
And then it says corroborated, doesn't it? As you scroll down, contact such and such, corroborated. And what that means is I and others, we went through the available at the time, and there's more we found, probably 100 more, specific things we dug out that Meier was told or given as a prophecy. In some cases, he's just told, hell, well, you ask about this thing and that, but a discovery. And, scientists, he was even told what the name of the friggin' thing that they would launch 10 years later were, and they named it that. But there's all this stuff, the stuff about Mars. I went up to see a scientist working on the Mars project. I blew his mind. He couldn't figure out how I had this stuff where this guy knew this before he, the NASA scientist, knew it. So
tell me this, has Billy been, what does Billy say about the moon? A lot of people think the moon's a weird place.
We've shown that a couple of times, one as a child. There may be some stuff on the other side, but it's a natural object. It's not hollow. It wasn't dragged in by some ETs. It was brought in with if I get this right, destroyer. When the destroyer comet came through, I think that's when the moon may have been dragged in. I might be wrong in my chronology. I know that Venus was brought in too by natural occurrences, astronomically, not by extraterrestrials and all this nonsense. And Meier talked about what was on the surface of Mars and the previous civilization that had been there and how they were wiped out and the asteroid. But I mean, Greg, we've just touched the tip of the top.
Is there life on Mars?
Not any longer. Oh, let me correct that. As Meier was told in 1976, there is very minute floric and faunic life forms, but not life forms that, like creatures walking around. There used to be civilization there. There were humans there. There were life forms, animals. There were vast rivers that flowed there. Meier, we published the exact accurate information on the water on Mars, which direction it flowed, where most of it was, before NASA ever discovered it.
Okay, everybody's got to check this out. Theyflyblog.com, theyfly.com. If you want to debate Michael Horn, sounds like he's open to it. Skeptics, come on.
Qualified. I just say this because I've mopped the floor with a lot of people who are, minor in it, and the bigger ones who won't take me on. I told you, but I don't mind debating. I mean, I think first do your homework. If you're a real UFO researcher and you really think you could, I'm going to show you how these photos are fake. I'm fine. I'd be glad to debate you. We could, if you want to do it here, if Greg wants to host a debate or something, it's fine. But please know what you're talking about, because otherwise you're done in 5 minutes. And because it's there. And this doesn't take, I'm not a genius. I simply know enough of this material, and I know probably 20 other people who know enough of this material that could mop the floor with any of these skeptics. We took the time to do the due diligence.
Also, for people that don't realize it, that the X-Files poster, it's a Billy Meier photo.
Yep.
People do not, I mean, that should be, that would be the first thing I would wonder. I'd go, I want to believe. Where does that come from? Oh, wait.
That's it. It was a modified version. And, gosh, I mean, Greg, there's so much here.
So tell me this, before we go, I mean, there is so much stuff about UFOs, and and a lot of things out there. I mean, leaked files from the CIA and the government. How much of those leaked files are complete BS? I mean, any of the stuff coming up, stuff about Roswell, stuff about, I mean, really, even the remote viewing on the planet Mars with the pyramid, all that stuff. Is there? Should we trust any of these documents from the CIA, or is it all just
I
fraud?
I'd say that there's some stuff where they probably have information on real sightings, um, and stuff like that. I won't say it. I don't think it's very important in the overall scheme of things, but they've got some real information. As for remote viewing, in 1995, I found this guy named Ed Dames who was teaching remote.
Right. The
I'm
famous, yeah, very famous guy.
I set up the technical remote viewing home study course. I was the associate producer. I brought him together with a producer. We went to Hawaii and shot that. And I kind of designed the way it should go. And I found out that Ed Dames could teach remote viewing to a degree, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it to save his life.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh, now that's kind of earth shattering.
taught me how to do it in I don't know, an hour. And I was before we went to Hawaii, I thought, I wonder what the guy looks like who's got the studio there. And I picked up a pencil and I drew it out. And I basically drew what the guy looked like because Ed had taught me something about it, but he couldn't do it. And I'm sorry to say, the evidence showed he couldn't do it, and that's
Oh,
fine.
wow. Wow.
I had to testify in a lawsuit the producer brought against Ed Dames, and I had to review every Art Bell radio program where Ed Dames made predictions, and he didn't get anything right. And
Whew.
Ed Dames I called it an oral charisma. He's very convincing. I thought he sounded. I thought I wanted to set him up. He said you could, and he could teach it. That was the joke here to a degree. So, but then I found out I'm working with a guy for about a year. He can't do this shit. So it was a disappointment. We were doing it, a lot of this stuff in Beverly Hills off of Robertson Olympic somewhere. Anyway, but with the other stuff, there have been some other sightings of extraterrestrials, yes. Other craft, yes. But this, why and how this is different, you can go through this and try to figure out if it's real. What does it mean to you? Now that you know, what does it mean? Remember, my perspective is the confirmed existence of and contact with advanced space traveling extraterrestrials would be the single most important discovery in science and human history. And the unasked question, here it is, in all of ufology, what is the reason for the contacts? And I've been answering that since 2004 when I put out my little DVD, The Meier Contacts, the Key to Our Future Survival. That's what this is about. It's not about ETs. It's not about prophets. It's not about having a gig as a UFO expert or anything. It's about getting a clue. This is about our survival.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. And it's now up to anybody that's interested. I answer all my email. It takes me time. I answer challenges. It takes me time. But this is what I do. It's a labor of love because I would like to see our country and our world survive and thrive. And this is the best thing I can do that I know of towards that.
Wow. Well, I am so grateful that somebody is exploring this stuff in as much depth as you are. Um, Michael Horn, American ambassador of Billy Meier, as well as researcher, author, filmmaker. I mean, this is a guy who's been doing it for a while. Take him on. He's ready for the challenge. You want to debate this guy? He'll give you a run for his money if you know research. But yeah, no, this. I admire the diligence with which you've dedicated yourself to one person's accounts as well as the phenomena around it. And hey, look, if you can prove that this is a hoax, good luck. Try. Let's just see if you can.
Look, I'm one of 120 people now who've been in close proximity. We've seen the craft. That's anecdotal because most of that, apart from the
How close
people,
did you see it? Well, you're
well,
pretty close to it.
20 feet. I was living in the mountains of Brazil at the time. It was at 10:05 p.m. on October 3rd.
Did Billy
Uh,
know you were going to see it at that point, or
well, I went over to Switzerland after that a week later, and I said, Billy, last Saturday or last Friday, whatever that was, October 3rd, 2011, I was out there and he said, oh yeah, that's the little monitoring craft. They just come by sometimes. They have them at the center all the time. People see them there all the time. There's photographs of them and everything. So it's just a small little craft, but it was startling at first. Oh, what's that? Another thing. But anyway, that's the anecdotal part. I don't take that to, into the courtroom or anything, so to speak. You take the real easy to prove evidence, the stuff that where somebody with a brain goes, hold it, case closed, you won, and you're done, and that's it. But
right?
we're a slow learning society here. We're gonna scramble around with COVID and fight the simplest ways of defeating it until we're blue in the face. But that's another thing. I hope I'll get a link to our interview here, our conversation.
Yeah, no, I mean, I will definitely make sure you have this, and yeah, what a very, very strange case. But hey, it's yes, it's out there.
Yes,
So check it out, check it out. Michael Horn, thank you again so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Greg Bornstein, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely.